Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
It's Shae's Story Show.
We're back.
We haven't done this in a while.
Nope.
But we've been busy too, so lots of stuff going around. But we did see that there's quite a bit of interest in the stories that we posted. So we're going to get back to them. Apologies, we have not finished Good Omens yet, but that's because Rendis is a busy person, and you know,
We're gonna get back to it, I promise.
someday. But today, I'm going to do what I had been promising to do and read The Windup Girl. So, full disclaimer, I would rate this book as R if it were a movie. There will be scenes that are violent or sexual or not for the faint of heart. So just keep that in mind. If you don't like those kinds of scenes, step away for a little bit. I will try to anticipate when they come, because not everything is an instant fade to black in this. Some of it is, but hey. For those of you who have no idea what The Windup Girl is, I'm going to go ahead and read off the synopsis here. It is, first of all, set in a not too far, a near future dystopian era. Everything's different. If you heard me read what was the other one? Shipbreaker. If you heard me read Shipbreaker, it's set in the same exact universe. There's genetically engineered people. There's calorie companies. There's a lot of dystopian kind of setting. But I enjoyed this book. I thought it was good. And I also apologize because I am going to get a lot of the words mispronounced or have difficulty with them. Whereas Shipbreaker was written for a teen audience, Windup Girl is not. And it has a lot of very big words and a lot of small difficult words, and some words in Thai or Mandarin or just words I don't know. But the synopsis is here of this novel. Anderson Lake is a calorie man, Agrigen's calorie man in Thailand. Undercover as a factory manager, Anderson combs Bangkok street markets in search of foodstuffs thought to be extinct, hoping to reap the bounty of history's lost calories. There, he encounters Emiko. Emiko is the Windup Girl, a strange and beautiful creature. One of the new people. Emiko is not human. She is an engineered being, crash-grown, and programmed to satisfy the decadent whims of Kyoto businessmen, but now abandoned to the streets of Bangkok. Regarded as soulless beings by some, devils by others, new people are slaves, soldiers, and toys in the rich in a chilling near future in which calorie companies rule the world. The oil age is past, and side effects of bioengineered plagues run rampant across the globe. So what happens when calories become currency? What happens when bioterrorism becomes a tool for corporate profits? And when said bioterrorism's genetic drift forces mankind on the cusp of post-human evolution? So, this will be The Windup Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi. Bacigalupi. I forgot how intricate that name is. Just all right. first page and I already see all the big words. Okay. Anyway, without further ado. No, I don't want mangosteen. Anderson Lake leans forward, pointing. I want that one, there. Polymine cap. The one with the... Oh. Polymine cap. The one with the red skin and the green hairs. The peasant woman smiles, showing teeth blackened from chewing betel nut, and points to a pyramid of fruits stacked beside her. Uni Jamaica. Right, those. Cap. Anderson nods and makes himself smile. What are they called? No. She pronounces the word carefully for his foreign ear and hands across a sample. Anderson takes the fruit, frowning. It's new? Ka. She nods, an affirmative. Anderson turns the fruit in his hand, studying it. It's more like a gaudy sea anemone or a furry pufferfish than a fruit. Coarse green tendrils protrude from all sides, tickling his palm. The skin has a rust-red tinge of blister rust, but when he sniffs, he doesn't get any stink of decay. It seems perfectly healthy, despite its appearance. No, the peasant woman says again, and then, as if reading his mind, no blister rust. Anderson nods absently. Around him, the market soy bustles with Bangkok's morning shoppers. Mounds of durians fill the alley in reeking piles, and water tubs splash with snakehead fish and redfin pla. Overhead, palm oil polymer tarps sag under the blast furnace heat of the tropic sun. Shading the market... Oops, that's better light. Sorry, I just turned. Overhead, palm oil polymer tarps sag under the blast furnace heat of the tropic sun, shading the market with hand-painted images of clipper ship trading companies and the face of the revered child queen. A man jostles past, holding vermilion-combed chickens high as they flap and squawk, outrage on their way to slaughter. And women in brightly colored fasten bargain and smile with vendors, driving down the price of pirated Utex rice and new variant tomatoes. None of it touches Anderson. So yeah, there's the clipper ships that were in the other book.
With the heroes from the last book on them, no doubt. Probably not.
I mean,
But maybe. Who knows?
I mean, they were. What was it? It was the rich company man's daughter and the shipbreaker turned mechanic.
Yep.
Anyway. No, the woman says again, seeking connection. The fruit's long hairs tickle his palm, challenging him to recognize its origin. Another Thai gene hack success, just like the tomatoes and eggplants and chilies that abound in the neighboring stalls. It's as if the Grahamite Bible's prophecies are coming to pass, as if St. Francis himself stirs in his grave, restless, preparing to stride forth onto the land, bearing with him the bounty of history's lost calories. And he shall come with trumpets, and Eden shall return. Anderson turns the strange hairy fruit in his hand. It carries no stink of cibiscosis, no scab of blister rust, no graffiti of gene-hacked weevil engraves its skin. The world's flowers and vegetables and trees and fruits make up the geography of Anderson Lake's mind. And yet, nowhere does he find a helpful signpost that leads him to identification. No, a mystery. He mimes what he would like to taste, and the peasant woman takes back the fruit, A brown thumb easily tears away the hairy rind, revealing a pale core, translucent in Venus. It resembles nothing so much as the pickled onions served in martinis at research clubs in Des Moines. Des Moines. She hands back the fruit. Anderson sniffs tentatively, inhales floral syrup. No, it shouldn't exist. Yesterday it didn't. Yesterday, not a single stall in Bangkok sold these fruits, and yet now they sit in pyramids piled all around this grimy woman where she squats on the ground under partial shading of her tarp. From around her neck, a gold-glinting amulet of the martyr, Fra Seub. Apologies on these names. Fra Seub winks at him. A talisman of protection against the agricultural plagues of the calorie companies. Anderson wishes he could observe the fruit in its natural habitat, hanging from a tree or lurking under the leaves of some bush. With more information, he might guess genus and family, might divine some whisper of the genetic past that the Thai kingdom is trying to excavate. But there's no more clues. He slips the Nall's slick, translucent ball into his mouth. A fist of flavor, ripe with sugar and fecundity. I'm not sure what that means, but fecundity. The sticky flower bomb coats his tongue. It's as though he's back in the high-grow fields of Iowa, offered his first tiny block of hard candy by a Midwest compact agronomist when he was nothing but a farmer's boy, barefoot amid the corn stalks. The shell-shocked moment of flavor, real flavor, after a lifetime devoid of it. Sun pours down. Shoppers jostle and bargain, but nothing touches him. He rolls the Nall around in his mouth, eyes closed, tasting the past, savoring the time when this fruit must once have flourished, before Cibiscosis and Nippon gene hack weevil and blister rust and scabious mold raised the landscape. Under the hammer heat of tropic sun, surrounded by the groan of water buffalo and the cry of dying chickens, he is one with paradise. As if he were a Grahamite, I'm so sorry this is difficult. Grahamite, he would fall to his knees and give ecstatic thanks for the flavor of Eden's return. Anderson spits the black pit into his hand, smiling. He has read travelogues of history's botanists and explorers, the men and women who pierce the deepest jungle wilderness of the earth in search of new species, and yet their discoveries cannot compare to this single fruit. Those people all sought discoveries. He has found resurrection. The peasant woman beams, sure of a sale. Algae hiloka. How much? Are they safe? He asks. She points at the Environment Ministry certificates laid on the cobbles beside her, underlining the dates of the inspection with a finger. Nice to ask if it's safe after he eats it.
You know.
Latest variation, she says. Top grade. Anderson studies the glinting seals. Most likely, she bribed the white shirts for stamps rather than going through the full inspection process that would have guaranteed immunity to 8th generation blister rust along with resistance to Cibiscosis 111, MT7, and MT8, technical terms. The cynical part of him supposed that it hardly matters. The intricate stamps that glitter in the sun are more talismanic than functional, something to make people feel secure in a dangerous world. In truth, if Cibiscosis breaks out again, these certificates will do nothing. There will be a new variation, and all those old tests will be useless. And then people will pray to their Phra Seub amulets in King Rama the 12th images, making offerings to the city pillar shrine, and they will all cough up the meat of their lungs no matter how many environmental Environment Ministry stamps adorn their produce. Anderson pockets the Null's pitch. I'll take a kilo. No, 2. Song. He hands over a hemp sack without bothering to bargain. Whatever she asks, it will be too little. Miracles are worth the world. A unique gene that resists a calorie plague or utilizes nitrogen more efficiently sends profits skyrocketing. If he looks around the market right now, and that truth is everywhere. That truth is everywhere displayed. The alley bustles with Thais purchasing everything from gene-ripped versions of Utex rice to vermilion variant poultry. But all of those things are old advances, based on previous gene hack work done by Agrogen and PureCal, and total nutrient holdings. The fruits of old science manufactured in the bowels of the Midwest's compact research labs. The Null is different. The Null doesn't come from the Midwest. The Thai kingdom is clever where others are not. It thrives while countries like India and Burma and Vietnam all fall like dominoes, starving and begging for scientific advances of the calorie monopolies. So if I remember right, some of these calorie companies were mentioned in the other book.
They were. I think they mentioned like one out of Texas.
The Utex, yeah.
Mm.
I remember the Utex being mentioned. I don't know if Agrogen was mentioned.
Might have been. They mentioned one out of India and the one out of Texas. And like, no, sorry, I'm thinking of something else. But yeah, I remember those.
Mm. A few people stop to examine Anderson's purchase, but even if Anderson thinks the price is low, they apparently find it too expensive and pass on. The woman hands across the Null and Anderson almost laughs with pleasure. Not a single one of these furry fruits should exist. He might as well be hefting a sack of trilobites. If his guess about the Null's origin is correct, it represents a return from extinction, as shocking as if a Tyrannosaurus were walking down Thanan's Sukhumvit. Thanon Sukhumvit. But then, the same is true about the potatoes and tomatoes, and chilies that fill the market, all piled with such splendid abundance, an array of festooned nightshades that no one has seen in generations. In this drowning city, all things seem possible. Fruits and vegetables return from the grave, extinct flowers blossom in the avenues, and behind it all, the Environment Ministry works magic with genetic material of generations lost. Carrying a sacked fruit, Anderson squeezes back from the soy to the avenue beyond. A seethe of traffic greets him. Morning commuters clogging Thanon Rama the Ninth like the Mekong in flood. I am so sorry if I am mispronouncing these. Bicycles and cycle rickshaws, blue-black water buffaloes, and great shambling megadonts. At Anderson's arrival, Lao Gu emerges from the shade of a crumbling office tower, carefully pinching off the burning tip of a cigarette. Nightshades again. They're everywhere. Nowhere else in the world, but here they riot in abundance. Lao Gu tucks the remainder of the tobacco into a ragged shirt pocket as he trots ahead of Anderson to their cycle rickshaw. The old Chinese man is nothing but a scarecrow, dressed in rags, but still he is lucky, alive when most of his people are dead. Employed while his fellow Malayan refugees are packed like slaughter chickens into sweltering expansion towers. Lao Gu has stringy muscles on his bones and enough money to indulge in Sinca cigarettes. To the rest of the yellow card refugees, he's as lucky as a king. Lao Gu straddles the cycle's saddle and waits patiently as Anderson clambers into the passenger seat behind. Office, Anderson says. Back up, then switches to Chinese. Zauba. The old man stands on his pedals, and they emerge into traffic. Around them, bicycle bells ring like Sibiskoskas chimes. Irritated at their obstruction, Lao Gu ignores them and weaves deeper into the traffic flow. Anderson reaches for another knoll, then restrains himself. He should save them. They're too valuable to gobble like a greedy child. The Thais have found some new way to decenter the past, and all he wants to do is feast on the evidence. He drums his fingers on the bagged fruit, fighting for self-control. To distract himself, he fishes for a pack of cigarettes and lights one. He draws in the tobacco, savoring the burn, remembering his surprise when he first discovered how successful the Thai kingdom had become, how widely spread the nightshades, And as he smokes, he thinks of Yates, remembers the man's disappointment as they sat across from one another with resurrected history smoldering between them. Nightshades. Yates's match flared in the dim... Oh, I did not notice the 3 dots. One moment while I took a sec. Because... Pineapple's not bad. Oh, never mind. It's pineapple strawberry.
Well, that's why. It did look a little pink for just pineapple.
I was wondering about that. But I already feel the strain on my throat. And these chapters are long, too. Nightshades. Yates' match flared in the dimness of Spring Life's offices, illuminating florid features as he touched flame to a cigarette and drew hard. Rice paper crackled. The tip glowed, and Yates exhaled, sending a stream of smoke ceilingward to where crank fans panted against the sauna swelter. Eggplants, tomatoes, chilies, potatoes, jasmine, nicotiana. He held up a cigarette and corked an eyebrow. Tobacco. He drew again, squinting in the cigarette's flare. All around, the shadowed desks and treadle computers of the company sat silent. In the evening, with the factory closed, it was just possible to mistake the empty desks for something other than the topography of failure. The workers might have only gone home, resting in anticipation of another hard day at their labors. Dust-mantled chairs and treadle computers put the lie to it. But in the dimness, with shadows draped across furniture and moonlight easing through mahogany shutters, it was possible to imagine what might have been. Overhead, the crank fans continued their slow turns. Laotian rubber motor bands, creaking rhythmically as they chained across the ceiling, drawing a steady trickle of kinetic power from the factory's central kink springs. The Thais have been lucky in their laboratories, Yates said, and now here you are. If I were superstitious, I'd think they'd conjured you along with their tomatoes. Every organism needs a predator. I understand. You should have reported how much progress they were making, Anderson said. The factory wasn't your only responsibility. Yates grimaced. His face was a study in tropic collapse. Broken blood vessels mapped rosy tributaries over his cheeks and punctuated the bulb of his nose. Watery blue eyes blinked back at Anderson, as hazy as the city's dung-choked air. I would have known you'd cut my niche. It's not personal. Just my life's work. He laughed, a dry rattling reminiscent of early onset sibiscosis. The sound would have had Anderson backing out of the room if he didn't know that Yates, like all of Agrigen's personnel, had been inoculated against the new strains. I've spent years building this, Yates said, and you tell me it's not personal. He waved toward the office's observation windows where they overlooked the manufacturing floor. I've got kink springs the size of my fist and hold a gigajoule of power, quadruple the capacity, weight ratio of any other spring in the market. I'm sitting on a revolution in energy storage, and you're throwing it away. He leaned forward. We haven't had power this portable since gasoline. Only if you can produce it. We are close, Yates insisted. Just the algae baths. They're the only sticking point. Anderson said nothing. Yates seemed to take this as encouragement. The fundamental concept is sound. Once the baths are producing in efficient quantities, you should have informed us when you first saw the nightshades in the markets. The Thais have been successfully growing potatoes for at least 5 seasons. They're obviously sitting on top of a seed bank, and yet we heard nothing from you. Not my department. I do energy storage, not production. Anderson snorted. Where are you going to get the calories to wind up your fancy kink springs if a crop fails? Blister rust is mutating every 3 seasons now. Recreational gene rippers are hacking into our designs for total nutrient, wheat, and soy pro. Our last strain of high-grow corn only beat weevil predation by 60%, and now we suddenly hear you're sitting on top of a genetic gold mine. People are starving. Yates laughed. Don't talk to me about saving lives. I saw what happened with the seed bank in Finland. We weren't the ones who blew the vaults. No one knew the Finns were such fanatics. Any fool on the street could have anticipated. Calorie companies do have a certain reputation. It wasn't my operation. Yates laughed again. That's always our excuse, isn't it? The company goes in somewhere, and we all stand back and wash our hands. Pretend like we weren't the ones responsible. The company pulled Soy Pro from the Burmese market, and we all stand aside saying, intellectual property disputes aren't our department. But people starve just the same. He sucked on his cigarette. Blue smoke. I honestly don't know how someone like you sleeps at night. It's easy. I say a little prayer to Noah and St. Francis, and thank God we're still one step ahead of blister rust. That's it, then. You'll shut the factory down. No, of course not. The kink spring manufacturing will continue. Oh. Yates leaned forward, hopeful. Anderson shrugged. It's a useful cover. So, the explanation of kink springs and other things will become clear.
I'm guessing they're the sex robots.
I mean, that would be your first thought.
Kink, spring,
Yeah.
Windup Girl.
I see what you did there. The cigarette's burning tip reaches Anderson's fingers. He lets it fall into traffic, rubs his singed thumb and index finger as Lao Gu pedals on through clogged streets. Bangkok, a city of divine beings, slides past. Saffron robed monks stroll along the sidewalks under the shade of black umbrellas. Children run in clusters, shoving and swarming, laughing and calling out to one another on their way to monastery schools. Street vendors extend arms draped with garlands of marigold for temple offerings, and hold up glinting amulets of revered monks to protect against everything from infertility to scabbous mold. Food carts smoke lost my place. Smoke and hiss with the scents of frying oil and fermented fish, while around the ankles of their customers, the flicker, shimmer, shapes of Cheshires twine, yowling and hoping for scraps. Cheshires will also become apparent later. Overhead, the towers of Bangkok's old expansion loom, robed in vines and mold. Windows long ago blown out, great bones picked clean. Without air conditioning or elevators to make them habitable, they stand and blister in the sun. Black smoke of illegal dung fires wafts from their pores, marking where Malayan refugees hurriedly scald chapatis and boiled kopi before the white short shirts can swarm the sweltering heights and beat them from their entrenchments. In the center of the traffic lanes, northern refugees from the Cold War prostrate themselves, hands upstretched, exquisitely polite in postures of need. Cycles and rickshaws and megadont wagons flow past them, parting like a river around boulders. The cauliflower growths of Fagan fringe scar the beggars' noses and mouths. Betel nut stains blacken their teeth. Anderson reaches into a pocket and tosses cash at their feet, nodding slightly at their is it pronounced Y or ways of thanks as he glides past. It's a gesture, but I'm not sure of its pronunciation. I think it's way.
Are you talking or reading? Sorry.
Talking, sorry. W-A-I-S. Way? I think it's way. Could be wise. W-A-I-S.
Where? Wait. There. Ways. I think it's just ways.
Ways. It is a gesture of some kind. I know that. A short while later, the whitewashed walls and alleys of the Farang manufacturing district come into view. Warehouses and factories all packed together, along with the scent of salt and rotting fish. Vendors scab along the alley lengths with bits of tarping and blankets spread above to protect them from the hammer or blast of the sun. Just beyond, the dike and lock system of King Rama XII's seawall looms, holding back the weight of the blue ocean. It's difficult not to always be aware of those high walls and the pressure of the water beyond. Difficult to think of the city of divine beings as anything other than a disaster waiting to happen. But the Thais are stubborn and have fought to keep their revered city of Krung Thep from drowning. With coal-burning pumps, the levied labor and deep faith of the visionary leadership of their Shakri dynasty, they have so far kept at bay that thing which has swallowed New York, Rangoon, Mumbai, and New Orleans. Hey! That was where the other book had taken place.
They're all dead.
Well, no, they live above the drowned cities.
Yeah, I know.
I took that seriously, apparently.
I mean, they could be. You don't know. I suppose they lived happily ever after.
That, I think it takes place relatively around the same time. I think this is, I'm not sure if this is a little bit after or before, but from what I understand, it's somewhere around the same time period. Tool's in one of the books. Not this one, but...
What a tool.
Tool was awesome.
Yeah.
Lao Gu forges down an alley, ringing his bell impatiently at the coolie laborers who clot the artery. Weatherall crates rock on brown backs, logos for Chaozu Chinese Kink Springs, Matsushita antibacterial handle grips, and Bollock's ceramic water filters sway back and forth, hypnotic with shambling rhythm. Images of the Buddha's teachings and the revered child queen splash along the factory walls, jostling with hand-painted pictures of Muay Thai matches past. The Spring Life factory rises over the traffic press, a high-walled fortress punctuated by huge fans turning slowly in its upper story vents. Across the Sui, a Chaozu bicycle factory mirrors it. In between them, the barnacle accretion of jumbled street carts that always clog around the entrances of factories, selling snacks and lunches to the workers inside. Lao Gu breaks inside the Spring Life courtyard and deposits Anderson before the factory's main doors. Anderson climbs down from the rickshaw, grabs his sack of gnaw, and stands for a moment, staring up at the 8-meter wide doors that facilitate Megadon access. The factory ought to be renamed Yates Folly. The man was a terrible optimist. Anderson can hear him arguing the wonders of gene-hacked algae, digging through desk drawers for grass, and scrawled notes as he protested. You can't prejudge my work just because the Ocean Bounty Project was a failure. Properly cured, the algae provides exponential improvements in torque absorption. Forget its calorie potential. Focus on the industrial applicants. I can deliver the entire energy storage market to you if you just give me a little more time. Try one of my demo springs at least before you make a decision. The roar of manufacturing envelops Anderson as he enters the factory, drowning out the last despairing howl of Yates' optimism. Megadonts groan against spindle cranks, their enormous heads hanging low, prehensile trunks scraping the ground as they tread slow circles around power spindles. The gene-hacked animals comprise the living heart of the factory's drive system, providing energy for conveyor lines and venting fans and manufacturing machinery. Their harnesses clank rhythmically as they strain forward. Union handlers in red and gold walk beside their charges, calling out to the beast, switching them occasionally, encouraging the elephant-derived animals to greater labor. On the opposite side of the factory, the production line excretes newly packaged kink springs, sending them past quality assurance and onto packaging, where the springs are palletized in preparation for some theoretical time when they will be ready for export. At Anderson's arrival on the floor, workers pause in their labors and weigh, pressing their palms together and raising them to their foreheads in a wave of respect that cascades down the line. Banyat, his head of QA, hurries over, smiling. He weighs. Weighs. Banyat smiles. The cup. Good. Better. Come, look. He signals up the line, and Noom, the day foreman, rings the warning bell that announces full line stop. Banyat motions Anderson to follow. Something interesting, you would be pleased. Anderson smiles tightly, doubting that anything Banyat says will be truly pleasing. He pulls a gnaw out of the bag and offers it to the QA man. Progress? Really? Banyat nods as he takes the fruit and gives it a cursory glance and peels it, pops a semi-translucent heart into his mouth. He shows no surprise, no special reaction, just eats the damn thing without a second thought. Anderson grimaces. Farang are always the last to know about changes in the country, a fact that Shae likes to point out when his paranoid mind begins to suspect that Anderson intends to fire him. Shae probably already knows about this fruit as well, or will pretend when he asks. Banyat tosses the fruit's pit into the bin of feed for the megadons, and leads Anderson down the line. "We fixed a problem with the cuttings press," he says. Num rings his warning bell again, and workers step back from their stations. On the third sounding of the bell, the Union Mahout tap their charges with bamboo switches, and the megadons shamble to a halt. The production line slows. At the far end of the factory, industrial kink spring drums tick and squeal as the factory's flywheels shed power into them. The juice that will restart the line when Anderson is done inspecting. Banyat leads Anderson down the now silent line past the weighing workers and their green and white livery, and pushes aside the palm oil polymer curtains that mark the entrance of the fining room. Here, Yates's industrial discovery is sprayed with glorious abandon, coating the kink springs with the residue of genetic serendipity. Women and children wearing triple filter masks look up and tear away their breathing protection to weigh deeply to the man who feeds them. Their faces are streaked with sweat and pale powder. Only the skin around their mouths and noses remains dark where the filters have protected them. He and Banyat press through the far side and into the swelter of the cutting rooms. Temper lamps blaze with energy, and the tide pool reek of breeding algae clogs. Temper lamps blaze with energy, and the tide pool reek of breeding algae clogs the air. Overhead, tiered racks of drying screens reach the ceiling, smeared with streamers of gene-ripped algae, dripping and withering and blackening into paste in the heat. The sweating line techs are stripped to nearly nothing, just shorts and tanks and protective headgear. It is a furnace, despite the rush of crank fans and generous venting systems. Sweat rolls down Anderson's neck. His shirt is instantly soaked. Banyat points. "Here, see?" He runs his finger along a disassembled cutting bar that lies beside the main line. Anderson kneels to inspect the surface. "Rust," Banyat murmurs. "I thought we inspected for that." "Salt water," Banyat smiles uncomfortably. "The ocean is close." Anderson grimaces at the dripping algae racks overhead. The algae tanks and drying racks don't help. Whoever thought we could just use waste heat to cure the stuff was a fool. Energy efficient, my ass. Banyat gives another embarrassed smile, but says nothing. "So you've replaced the cutting tools. 25% reliability now." "That much better?" Anderson nods perfunctorily. He signals to the tool leader, and the man shouts out through the fining room to Noom. The warning bell rings again, and the heat presses and temper lamps begin to glow as electricity pours into the system. Anderson shies from the sudden increase in heat. The burning lamps and presses represent a carbon tax of 15,000 baht every time they begin to glow. A portion of the kingdom's own global carbon budget that Spring Life pays handsomely to siphon off. Yates's manipulation of the system was ingenious, allowing the factory to use the country's carbon allocation, but the expense of the necessary bribes is still extraordinary. The main flywheels spin up, and the factory shivers as gears beneath the floor engage. The floorboards vibrate. Kinetic power sparks through the system like adrenaline, a tingling anticipation of the energy about to pour into the manufacturing line. A megadot screams protest and is lashed into silence. The whine of the flywheels rises to a howl and then cuts off as joules gush into the drive systems. The line boss's bell rings again. Workers step forward to align the cutting tools. They're producing 2 gigajoule kink springs, and the smaller size requires extra care with the machinery. Further down the line, the spooling process begins, and the cutting press and its newly repaired precision blades rises into the air on hydraulic jacks, hissing. Kun, please, Banyat motions. Anderson behind a protective cage. Noom's bell rings a final time. The line grinds into gear. Anderson feels a brief thrill as the system engages. Workers crouch behind their shields. Kink spring filaments hisses out the alignment, flangs, and threads through a series of heated rollers. A spray of stinking reactant showers the rust-colored filament, greasing it in the slick film that will accept Yates's algae power in an event coat. The press slams down. Anderson's teeth ache with the crush of the weight. The kink spring wire snaps cleanly, and then the severed filament is steaming through the curtains and into the fining room. 30 seconds later, it reemerges pale gray and dusty with the algae-derived powder. It threads into a new series of heated rollers before being tortured into its final structure, winding in on itself, torquing into a tighter and tighter curl, working against everything in its molecular structure as the spring is tightened down. A deafening shriek of tortured metal rises. Lubricants and algae residue shower from the sheathing as the spring is squeezed down, spattering workers and equipment, and then the compressed kink spring is being whisked away to be installed in its case and sent to QA. A yellow LED flashes all clear. Workers dash out from their cages to reset the press, and as a new stream of rust-colored metal hisses out of the bowels of the tempering rooms. Rollers chatter, running empty. Stoppered lubricant nozzles cast a fine mist into the air as they self-cleanse before the next application. The workers finish aligning the presses and duck again behind their barriers. If the system breaks, the kink spring filament will become a high-energy blade whipping uncontrollably through the production room. Anderson has seen heads carved open like soft mangoes, and the short parts of people. The Pollock spattered Pollock. I'm not a fan of his art. The Pollock spatter of blood that comes from industrial system failures. That sounds like a sight.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a really unpleasant sight.
Sounds
really unpleasant.
They've made a number of foreshadowing, but only some of them come true, I think. And I know
they foreshadowed it in Shipbreaker too, about what happened when the one guy got sucked up into the.
Oh yeah. And I like that he was able to beat him just because he could read.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part.
That was good foretelling as well.
Yeah.
It was foretold.
Oh, excuse me. Here we go. The press Excuse me. No hiccups now. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay. The press slams down, clipping another kink spring among the 40 per hour that now apparently will have only 75% chance of ending up in a supervised disposal fill at the Environment Ministry. They're spending millions to produce trash that will cost millions more to destroy. A double-edged sword that just keeps cutting. Yates screwed something up, whether by accident or by spiteful sabotage, and it's taken more than a year to realize the depth of the problem. To examine the algae baths that breed the kink springs, revolutionary coatings, to rework the corn resins that enclose the spring's gear interfaces, to change the QA practices, to understand what a humidity level that hovers near 100% year-round does to a manufacturing process conceptualized in drier climes. A burst of pale filtering dust kicks into the room as a worker stumbles through the curtains from the finding chamber. His dark face is a sweat-streaked combination of grit and palm oil spray. The swinging curtains reveal a glimpse of his colleagues encased in pale dust clouds, shadows, and a snowstorm, as the kink spring filament is encased in the power that keeps the springs from locking under intense compression. All that sweat, all those calories, all that carbon allotment, all to present a believable cover for Anderson as he unravels the mystery of nightshades and all. A rational company would shut down the factory. Even Anderson, with his limited understanding of the processes involved in this next generation kink spring manufacture, would do so. But if his workers and the unions and the white shirts and the many listening ears of the kingdom are to believe that he is an aspiring entrepreneur, the factory must run, and run hard. Anderson shakes Banyat's hand and congratulates him on his good work. It's a pity, really. The potential for success is there. When Anderson sees one of Yates' springs actually work, his breath catches. Yates was a madman, but wasn't stupid. Anderson has watched jewels pour out of the tiny kink spring cases, ticking along contentedly for hours, when other springs wouldn't have held a quarter of the energy at twice the weight, or would simply have constricted into a single molecularly bound mass under the enormous pressure of the jewels being dumped into them. Sometimes Anderson is almost seduced by the man's dream. Anderson takes a deep breath and ducks back into the finding room. He comes out on the other side in a cloud of algae powder and smoke. He sucks air redolent with trampled megadont dung and heads up the stairs to his offices. Behind him, one of the megadons shrieks again, the sound of a mistreated animal. Anderson turns, gazing down at the factory floor, and makes a note of the Mahout. Number 4, spindle. Another problem in the long list that spring life presents. He opens the door to the administrative offices. Inside, the rooms are much as they were when he first encountered them. Still dim, still cavernously empty, with desks and treadle computers sitting silent in the shadows. Thin blades of sunlight ease between teak window shutters, illuminating smoky offerings to whatever gods failed to save Tan Hok Seng's Chinese clan in Malaya. Sandalwood incense chokes the room, and more silken streamers rise from a shrine in the corner where smiling golden figures squat over dishes of Utex rice and sticky fly-covered mangoes. Hok Seng is already sitting at his computer. His bony leg ratchets steadily at the treadle, powering the microprocessors and the glow of the 12-centimeter screen in its gray light. Anderson catches a flicker of Hokseng's eyes and the twitch of a man fearing bloody slaughter every time a door opens. The old man's flinch is as hallucinogenic as a Cheshire's fade. One moment there, the next gone, and doubted. But Anderson is familiar enough with the yellow card refugees to recognize the suppressed terror. He shuts the door, muting the manufacturing roar, and the old man settles. Anderson coughs and waves at the swirling incense smoke. I thought I told you to quit burning that stuff. Hokseng shrugs, but doesn't stop treadling or typing. Shall I open the windows? His whisper is like bamboo scraping over sand. Christ, no. Anderson grimaces at the tropic blaze beyond the shutters. Just burn it at home. I don't want it here. Not anymore. Yes, of course. I mean it. Hokseng's eyes flick up for a moment before returning to his screen. I don't think I realized the first time I read this that they had to, tread to make a computer run.
Mm-hmm.
The jet of his cheekbones and the hollows of his eyes show in sharp relief under the glow of the monitor. His spider fingers continue tapping at the keys. As for luck, he murmurs. A low, wheezing chuckle follows. Even foreign devils need luck. With all the factory troubles, I think maybe you would appreciate the help of Budai. Not here, Anderson. Anderson dumps his newly acquired gnaw on his desk and sprawls in his chair, wipes his brow. Burn it at home. Hokseng inclines his head slightly in an acknowledgement. Overhead, the rows of crank fans rotate lazily, bamboo blades panting against the office's swelter. The two of them sit marooned, surrounded by the map of Yates' grand designs. Ranks of empty desks and workstations sit silent. The floor plan that should have held sales staff, shipping logistic clerks, HR people, and secretaries. Anderson sorts through the gnaw, holds up one of his green-haired discoveries for Hokseng. Have you ever seen one of these before? Hokseng glances up. The Thai call them gnaw. He returns to his work, treading through spreadsheets that will never add in red ink that will never be reported. I know that what the Thai call them. Anderson gets up and crosses to the old man's desk. Hokseng flinches as Anderson sets the gnaw beside his computer, eyeing the fruit as if it were a scorpion. Anderson says, The farmers in the market could tell me the Thai name. Did you have them down in Malaya, too? Hokseng starts to speak, then stops. He visibly fights for self-control, his face working through a flicker flash of emotions. Again, he breaks off. Anderson watches fear mold and remold Hokseng's features. Less than 1% of the Malayan Chinese escaped the incident. By any measure, Hokseng is a lucky man, but Anderson pities him. A simple question, a piece of fruit, and the old man looks as if he's about to flee the factory. Hokseng stares at the gnaw, breath rasping. Finally he murmurs, None in Malaya. Only Thais are clever with such things. And then he is working again, eyes fixed on the little computer screen, memories locked away. Anderson waits to see if Hokseng will reveal anything more about the old but the old man doesn't raise his eyes again. The puzzle of the gnaw will have to wait. Anderson returns to his own desk and starts sifting through the mail. Receipts and tax papers that Hokseng has prepared sit at one corner of his desk, demanding attention. He begins working through the stack, adding his signature to adding a signature to Megadont Union paychecks and the Spring Life chop to waste disposal approvals. He tugs at his shirt, fanning himself against the increasing heat and humidity. Eventually, Hawk Sing looks up. Banyat was looking for you. Anderson nods, distracted by the forms. They found rust on the cutting press. The replacement improved reliability by 5%. 25% then. Anderson shrugs. Flips more pages. Adds his chop to an Environment Ministry carbon assessment. That's what he says. He folds the document back in its envelope. Still not a profitable statistic. The springs are all wind and no release. They keep jewels the way the Samdet Chaupreya keeps the Child Queen. Anderson makes a face. Oh, that's Hawk saying, not Anderson. Anderson makes a face of irritation, but doesn't bother defending the erratic quality. Did Banyat also tell you about the nutrient tanks? Hawk Sang asks. For the algae? No, just the rust. Why? They have been contaminated. Some of the algae is not producing the. Hawk Sang hesitates. The skim. It's not productive. He didn't mention it to me. Another slight hesitation, then I'm sure he tried. Did he say how bad it was? Hawk Sang shrugs. Just that the skim does not meet specifications. Anderson scowls. I'm firing him. I don't need a QA man who can't actually tell me the bad news. Perhaps you were not paying close attention. Anderson has a number of words for people who try to raise a subject and then somehow fail. But he's interrupted by a scream from the Megadont downstairs. The noise is loud enough to make the window shake. Anderson pauses, listening for a follow-up cry. That's the number 4 power spindle, he says. The Mahout is incompetent. Hawk Sang doesn't look up from his typing. They are Thai. They are all incompetent. Wow, Hawk Sang. Anderson stifles a laugh at the yellow card's assessment. Well, that one is worse. He goes back to his mail. I want him replaced. Number 4 spindle. Remember that. Hawk Sang's treadle loses its rhythm. This is a difficult thing, I think. Even the Dung Lord must bow before the Megadon Union. Without the labor of the Megadons, one must resort to the jewels of men. Not a powerful bargaining position. I don't care. I want that one out. We can't afford a stampede. Find some polite way to get rid of them. Anderson pulls another stack of paychecks, waiting for his signature. Hawk Sang tries again. Kun, negotiating with the union is a complicated thing. That's why I have you. It's called delegating. That's why I have you. It's called delegating. Anderson continues, flipping the papers. Yes, of course. Hawk Sang regards him dryly. Thank you for your management instruction. You keep telling me I don't understand the culture here, Anderson says. So take care of it. Get rid of that one. I don't care if you're polite or if everyone loses face, but find a way to axe him. It's dangerous to have someone like that in the power train. Hawk Sang's lip purse, but he doesn't protest anymore. Anderson decides to assume that he will be obeyed. He flips through the pages of another permit letter from the Environment Ministry, grimacing. Only Thais would spend so much of their time making a bribe look like a service agreement. They're polite, even when they're shaking you down, or when there's a problem with the algae tanks. Banyat. Anderson shuffles through the forms on his desk. Hawk Sang, The old man doesn't look up. I will take care of your mahout, he says as he keeps typing. It will be done, even if it costs you when they come to bargain again for bonuses. Nice to know. But that's not my question. Anderson taps his desk. You said Banyat was complaining about the algae skin. Is he having problems with the new tanks or the old ones? He was unclear. Didn't you tell me we had replacement equipment coming off the anchor pads last week? New tanks? New nutrient cultures? Hawksang's typing falters for a moment. Anderson pretends puzzlement as he shuffles through his papers again, already knowing that the receipts and quarantine forms aren't present. I should have a list somewhere. I'm sure you told me it was arriving. He looks up. The more I think about it, the more I think I shouldn't be hearing about any contamination problems. Not if our new equipment actually cleared customs and got installed. Hawksang doesn't answer. Presses on with his typing as though he hasn't heard. Hawksang, is there something you forgot to tell me? Hawksang's eyes remain fixed in the gray glow of his monitor. Anderson waits. Fireworks.
Fireworks.
The rhythmic creak of the crank fans and the ratchet of Hawksang's treadle fills the silence. There is no manifest, the old man says finally. The shipment is still in customs. It was supposed to clear last week. There are delays. You told me there wouldn't be a problem, Anderson says. You were certain. You told me you were expediting customs personally. I gave you extra cash to be sure of it. The tide keep time in their own method. Perhaps it will be this afternoon. Perhaps tomorrow. Hawksang makes a face that resembles a grin. They are not like we Chinese. They are lazy. Everybody's going to be racist in this book, I think. Or at least a good number of people. Not all. Fireworks.
More fireworks, yep. You heard a little sparkle spreader?
I did. Did you actually pay the bribes? The Trade Ministry was supposed to get a cut to pass on to their pet white shirt inspector. I paid them. Enough. Hawksang looks up, eyes narrow. I paid. You didn't pay half and keep half for yourself. Hawksang laughs nervously. Of course I paid everything. Anderson studies the yellow card a moment longer, trying to determine his honesty, then gives up and tosses down the papers. He isn't sure why he cares, but it galls him that the old man thinks he can be fooled so easily. He glances again at the sack of gnaw. Perhaps Hawksang senses just how secondary the factory is. He forces the thought away and presses the old man again. Tomorrow, then. Hawksang inclines his head. I think it would be most likely. I'll look forward to it. Hawksang doesn't respond to the sarcasm. Anderson wonders if it even translates. The man speaks English with extraordinary facility, but every so often they reach an impasse of language that seems more rooted in culture than vocabulary. Anderson returns to the paperwork. Tax forms here, paychecks there. The workers cost twice as much as they should. Another problem of dealing with the kingdom. Thai workers for Thai jobs. Yellow card refugees from Malaya are starving in the street, and he can't hire them. By rights, Hawksang should be out in the job line starving with all the other survivors of the incident. Without his specialized skills in language and accountancy and Yates' indulgence, he would be starving. Anderson pauses on a new envelope. It's posted to him, personally. But true to form, the seal is broken. Hawksang has a hard time of respecting the sanctity of other people's mail. They've discussed the problem repeatedly, but still the old man makes mistakes. Quote. Inside the envelope, Anderson finds a small invitation card. Relay. Proposing a meeting. Anderson taps the invitation card against his desk. Thoughtful. Relay. Floats some of the old expansion, an ancient piece of driftwood left at high tide from the time when petroleum was cheap and men and women crossed the globe in hours instead of weeks. When the last of the jumbo jets rumbled off the flooded runways of Suvarnabhumi, Relay stood knee-deep in rising water and watched them flee. He squatted with his girlfriends, and then outlived them, and then claimed new ones, forging a life of lemongrass and bat, and fine opium, if his stories are to be believed. He has survived coups and counter-coups, calorie plagues, and starvation. These days, the old man squats like a liver-spotted toad in his Plonchit Club, smiling in self-satisfaction as he instructs newly arrived foreigners in the lost arts of pre-contraction debauch. Pre-contraction debauch. There we go. Anderson tosses the card on his desk. Whatever the old man's intentions, the invitation is innocuous enough. Relay hasn't lived this long in the kingdom without developing a certain paranoia of his own. Anderson smiles slightly, glancing up at Hawksing. The two would make a fine pair. Two uprooted souls. Two men far from their homelands, each of them surviving by their wits and paranoia. If you are doing nothing other than watching me work, Hawksing says, the Megadont Union is requesting a renegotiation of their rates. Anderson regards the expenses piled on his desk. I doubt they're so polite. Hawkson's pen pauses. The Thai are always polite, even when they threaten. The Megadont on the floor below screams again. Anderson gives Hawksing a significant look. I guess that gives you a bargaining chip when it comes to getting rid of the number 4 Mahout. Hell, maybe I just won't pay them anything at all until they get rid of that bastard. The Union is powerful. Another scream shakes the factory, making Anderson flinch. And stupid. He glances toward the observation windows. What the hell are they doing to that animal? He motions at Hawksing. Go check on them. Hawksing looks as if he will argue, but Anderson fixes him with a glare. The old man gets to his feet. A resounding trumpet of protest interrupts whatever complaint the old man is about to voice. The observation windows rattle violently. What the? Another trumpeted wail shakes the building, followed by a mechanical shriek. The power train is seizing. Anderson lurches out of the chair and runs for the window, but Hawksing reaches it ahead of him. The old man stares through the glass, mouth agape. Yellow eyes the size of dinner plates rise level with the observation window. The Megadont... Jeez, the size of dinner plates.
Mm-hmm.
It's a giant elephant.
Yep.
The Megadont is up on its hind legs, swaying. The beast's 4 tusks have been sawn off for safety, but it's still a monster. 15 feet at the shoulder, 10 tons of muscle and rage, balanced on its hind legs. It pulls against the chains that bind it to the winding spindle. Its trunk lifts, exposing a cavernous maw. Anderson jams his hands over its ears. The Megadon screamed hammer through the glass. Anderson collapses to his knees, stunned. Christ, his ears are ringing. Where's that Mahout? Hawksing shakes his head. Anderson isn't even sure the man has heard. Sounds in his own ears are muffled and distant. He staggers to the door and yanks it open just as the Megadon crashes down on spindle 4. The power spindle shatters. Teak shards spray in all directions. Anderson flinches as their hat goes. Flinches as splinters fly past his skin. Splinters fly past his skin, and his skin burn with needle slashes. Down below, the Mahouts are frantically unchaining their beasts and dragging them away from the maddened animal, shouting encouragement, forcing their will on the elephantine creatures. The Megadons shake their heads and groan protest, tugging against their training, overwhelmed by the instinctual urge to aid their cousin. The rest of the Thai workers are fleeing for the safety of the street. The maddened Megadon launches another attack on its winding spindle. Spokes shatter. The Mahout who should have controlled the beast is a mash of blood and bone on the floor. Well, we know what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
Anderson ducks back into the office. He dodges around empty desks and jumps another, sliding over its surface to land before the company's safes. His fingers slip as he spins the combination dials. Sweat drips from his eyes. 23 right, 106 left. His hand moves to the next dial as he prays he won't screw up the pattern and have to start again. More wood shatters on the factory floor, accompanied by the screams of someone who got too close. Shit. Hawk Sang appears at his elbow, crowding. Anderson waves the old man away. Tell the people to get out of here. Clear everyone out. I want everyone out. Hawk Sang nods, but lingers as Anderson continues to struggle with the combination. Anderson glares at him. Go! Hawk Sang ducks acquiescence and runs for the door, calling out, his voice lost in the screams of fleeing workers and shattering hardwoods. Anderson spins the last of the dials and yanks the safe open. Papers, stacks of colorful money, eyes-only records, a compression file, a compression rifle, a spring pistol. Yates. He grimaces. The old bastard seems to be everywhere today, as if his... This is another word I'm unfamiliar with. As if his fee, or phi, I'm going to say
Full
fee.
thumb.
Huh?
Full thumb.
Fee, P-H-I-I.
Yes, but you said fee. Then you said phi, and I said
I
full
did.
thumb.
Oh, I did. As if his fee were riding on Anderson's shoulder. Anderson pumps the handgun spring and stuffs it into his belt. He pulls out the compression rifle, checks its load as another scream echoes behind. At least Yates prepared for this. The bastard was naive, but he wasn't stupid. Anderson pumps the rifle and strides for the door. Down on the manufacturing floor, blood splashes the drive systems and QA lines. It's difficult to see who has died. More than just one Mahout. The sweet stink of human offal permeates the air. Gut streamers decorate the Megadon's circuit around its spindle. The animal rises again, a mountain of genetically engineered muscle fighting against the last of its bonds. Anderson levels his rifle. At the edge of his vision, another Megadon rises onto its hind legs, trumpeting sympathy. The Mahouts are losing control. He forces himself to ignore the expanding mayhem and puts his eye into the scope. His rifle crosshairs sweep across the rusty wall of wrinkled flesh magnified with the scope. The beast is so vast he can't miss. He switches the rifle to full automatic, exhales, and lets the gas chamber unleash. A haze of darts leaps from the rifle. Blaze orange dots pepper the Megadon's skin, marking hits. Toxins concentrated from Magragen's research on wasp venom pumped through the animal's body, gunning for its central nervous system. Wow. Anderson lowers the rifle. Without the scope's magnification, he can barely make out the scattered darts on the beast's skin. In another few moments, it will be dead. The Megadon wheels and fixes its attention on Anderson, eyes flickering with Pleistocene rage. Despite himself, Anderson is impressed by the animal's intelligence. It's almost as if the animal knows what he has done. The Megadon gathers itself and heaves against its chains. Iron links crack and whistle through the air, smashing onto conveyor lines. A fleeing worker collapses. Anderson drops his useless rifle and yanks out the spring gun. It's a toy against 10 tons of enraged animal, but it's all he has left. The Megadon charges, and Anderson fires, pulling the trigger as quickly as his finger can convulse. Useless bladed discs spatter against the avalanche. The Megadon slaps him off his feet with its trunk. The prehensile appendage coils around his leg like a python. Anderson scrapples for a grip on the door jamb, trying to kick free. The trunk squeezes. Blood rushes into his head. He wonders if the monster simply plans to pop him like a bloated mosquito. But then the beast is dragging him off the balcony. Anderson scrabbles for a last handhold as the railing slides past. Then he's airborne, flying free. The Megadon's exultant trumpeting echoes as Anderson sails through the air. The factory floor rushes up. He slams into concrete. Blackness swallows him. Lie down and die. Anderson fights unconsciousness. Just die. He tries to get up, to roll away, to do anything at all, but he can't move. Colorful shapes fill his vision, trying to coalesce. The Megadon is close. He can smell its breath. Color blotches converge. The Megadon looms, rusty skin and ancient rage. It raises a foot to pulp him. Anderson rolls onto his side, but can't get his legs to work. He can't even crawl. His hands scramble against the concrete like spiders on ice. He can't move quickly enough. Oh, Christ, I don't want to die like this. Not here, not like this. He's like a lizard with his tail caught. He can't get up, he can't get away. He's going to die, jelly under the foot of an oversized elephant. The Megadon groans. Anderson looks over his shoulder. The beast has lowered its foot. It sways, drunken. It snuffles about with its trunk end, then abruptly its hindquarters give out. The monster settles back onto his haunches, looking ridiculously like a dog. Its expression is almost puzzled, a drugged surprise that its body no longer obeys. Slowly, its forelegs sprawl before it, and it sinks, groaning into straw and dung. The Megadon's eyes shrink to Anderson's level. They stare into his own, nearly human, blinking confusion. His trunk stretches out for him again, slapping clumsily. A python of muscle and instinct, all uncoordinated now. Its maw hangs open, panting. Sweet furnace heat gusts over him. The trunk prods at him, rocks him, can't get a grip. Anderson slowly drags himself out of reach. He gets to his knees, then forces himself upright. He sways dizzily, then manages to plant his feet and stand tall. One of the Megadon's yellow eyes tracks his movement. The rage is gone. Long-lashed eyelids blink. Anderson wonders what the animal is thinking. If the neural havoc tearing through its system is something it can feel, if it knows its end is imminent, or if it just feels tired. Standing over it, Anderson almost feels pity. The 4 ragged ovals where its tusks once stood are grimy, foot-diameter ivory patches, savagely sawed away. Sores glisten on its knees, and scabrous growths speckle its mouth. Close up and dying, with its muscles paralyzed and its ribs heaving in and out, it's just an ill-used creature. The monster was never destined for fighting. The megadont lets out a final gush of breath. Its body sags. People are swarming all around Anderson, shouting, tugging at him, trying to help their wounded and find their dead. People are everywhere. Red and gold Union colors, green spring life livery, the mahouts clamoring over the giant corpse. For a second, Anderson imagined Yates standing behind him, smoking nightshade and gloating at all the trouble. And you said you'd be gone in a month. And then Hawk Sing is beside him. Whisper voice and black almond eyes, and a bony hand that reaches up to touch his neck and comes away drenched in red. You are bleeding, he murmurs.
What bleeding?
That was chapter 1.
That was chapter 1.
Yes. It was.
Twas.
I.
Nice before.
Yeah.
Rustmas. Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, excuse me. I might need a snack. What time are we at?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half? It took me an hour and a half to read that chapter.
That was a lot.
It's a long. I knew it was a long chapter, but that was a lot.
That was a lot.
Shit. I dropped my bobcat.
You dropped your bottle cap.
I did. Oh, here it is. Hey, lady, connected, heads down. Whatever. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
So what did we learn?
Don't fuck with megalodons.
Don't fuck with megadons. Okay. I know that first chapter is a huge thing because it's kind of setting the scenario, everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Gave a lot of information. Lift! Hawk Sing shouts. Palm and Nu and Kukrit and Kanda all lean against the shattered winding spindle, drawing it from its cradle like a splinter pulled from the flesh of a giant, dragging it up until they can send the girl Mai down underneath. I can't see, she shouts. Palm and Nu's muscles flex as they try to keep the spindle from resetting itself. Hawk Sing kneels and slides a shake light down to the girl. Her fingers brush his, and then the LED tool is gone. Down into the darkness. The light is worth more than she is. She hopes they don't drop the spindle back down into the seat while she's down there. Well, he calls down a minute later. Is it cracked? No answer comes from below. Hawk Sing hopes she isn't caught, trapped somehow. He settles into a squat as he waits for her to finish her inspection. All around the factory is a hive of activities as workers try to put the place back in order. Men swarm over the Megadon's corpse. Union workers with bright machetes and 4-foot bone saws, their hands red with their work as they render down a mountain of flesh. Blood runs off the beast as its hide is stripped away, revealing marbled muscle. Hawk Sing shudders at the sight, remembering his own people similarly disassembled, other bloodlettings, other factory wreckage. Well, that's dark. You'll learn more. Good warehouses destroyed, good people lost. It's also reminiscent of when the green headbands came with their machetes and his warehouses were burned. Jute and Tamarind and Kink Springs all going up in fire and smoke. Slick machetes gleaming in the blaze. He turns his eyes away, forcing down memories. Forces himself to breathe. As soon as the Megadont Union heard of one of their own was lost, they sent their professional butchers. Hawk Sing tried to get them to drag the carcass outside to finish their work in the streets, to make room for the powertrain repairs, but the union people refused, and so now, in addition to the buzz of activity and cleanup, the factory is full of flies and the increasing reek of death. Bones protrude from the corpse like coral rising from an ocean of deep red meat. Blood runs from the animal, rivers of it, rushing toward the storm drains and Bangkok's coal-driven flood control pumps. Oksang watches sourly as blood flows past. The beast held gallons of it, untold calories rushing away. The butchers are fast, but it will take them most of the night to dismember the animal completely. Is it done yet? Palm gasps. Hoksang's attention returns to the problem at hand. Palm and Nu and their compatriots are all straining against the spindle's weight. Hoksang again calls down into the hole. What do you see, Mai? Her words are muffled. Come up, then. He settles back on his haunches, wipes sweat from his face. The factory is hotter than a rice pot. With all the megadonts led back to their stables, there is nothing to dry the factory's lines or charge the fans that circulate air through the building. Wet heat and death stench swaddle them like a blanket. They might as well be in the slaughter grounds of Klong Tue. Oxen fights the urge to gag. A shout rises from the union butchers. They cut open the megadon's belly, and intestines gush out. Offal gatherers, the Dung Lord's people, all wade into the mass and begin shoveling it into handcarts. A lucky source of calories, with such a clean source. The offal will likely go to feed the pigs of the Dung Lord's perimeter farms, or stock the yellow card food lines, feeding the Malay and Chinese refugees who live in the sweltering old expansion towers under the Dung Lord's protection. Whatever the pigs in yellow cards don't eat will be dumped into the methane compositors of the city, along with the daily fruit rind and dung collections, to bake steadily into compost and gas, and eventually light the city streets with the green glow of approved burned methane. Hoksang tugs at a lucky mole, thoughtful. A good monopoly, that. The Dung Lord's influence touches so many parts of the city. It's a wonder that he hasn't been made prime minister. Certainly, if he wanted it. The godfather of godfathers, the greatest Jiaopor to ever influence the kingdom, could have anything he wanted. But will he want what I have to offer? Hoksang wonders. Will he appreciate a good business opportunity? Mai's voice finally filters up from underneath, interrupting his rumination. It's cracked, she shouts. A moment later, she draws her way out of the hole, dripping sweat and covered with dust. Nu and Palm and the rest release their hemp ropes. The spindle crashes back into its cradle, and the floor shakes. Mai glances behind her at the noise. Hoksang thinks he catches a glimpse of fear, the realization that spindle could have truly crushed her. The look is gone as quickly as it came. A resilient child. Yes? Hoksang asks. Go on. Is it the core that has split? Yes, Kun. I can slide my hand into the crack this far. She shows him, touching her hand nearly at her wrist. And another at the far side, just the same. Tamade. Hoksang curses. He's not surprised, but still. And the chain drive? She shakes her head. The links I could see were bent. He nods. Gitlin and Lek and Chuan. Chuan's dead. She waves toward the smears where the Megadont trampled 2 workers. Hoksang grimaces. Yes, of course. Along with Noi and Kapifon and and unfortunate Banyat, the QA man, who will never now hear Mr. Anderson's irritation that he allowed line contamination in the algae baths. Another expense. 1,000 baht to the dead workers' families, and 2,000 for Banyat. He grimaces again. Find someone else then. Someone small from the cleaning gang like you. You would be going underground. Pam, Inu, and Kukrit, get the spindle out. All the way out. We will need to inspect the main drive system, link by link. We cannot even consider starting again until it has been checked. What's the rush? Palm laughs. It will be a long time before we run again. The Farang will have to pay the union bags and bags of opium before they're willing to come back. Fireworks. Not after... until they are willing to come back. Not after you gun down Hopreed. When they do return, we won't have number 4 spindle. Hoksang snaps. It will take time to win an approval from the crown to cut another tree of this diameter, and then to float the log down from the north, assuming the monsoon doesn't come at all this year. And all that time, we will be running under constrained power. Think about that. Some of you will not be working at all. He nods at the spindle. The ones who work hardest will be the ones who stay. Palm smiles apologetically, hiding his anger in ways. Kun, I was loose with my words. I meant no offense. Good then. Hoksang nods and turns away. He keeps his face sour, but privately he agrees. It will take opium and bribes and a renegotiation of their power contract before the Megadons once again make their shuffling revolutions around the spindle cranks. Another red item for the balance sheets, and it doesn't even include the cost of the monks who will need to chant for, or the Brahmin priests, or the Feng Shui experts, or the mediums who must consult with the fee, so that the workers will be placated and continue working in this bad luck factory. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Tan Jiangsheng. Hoksang looks up from his calculations. Across the floor, Yang Guizi Anderson Lake is sitting on a bench beside the workers' lockers, a doctor tending his wounds. At first, the foreign devil wanted to have her sew him upstairs, but Hoksang convinced him to do it down on the factory floor in public, where the workers could see him, with his white tropical suit covered with blood like a fee out of a graveyard, but still alive at least, and unafraid. A lot of face to be gained from that. The foreigner is fearless. The man drinks from a bottle of Mekong whiskey that he sent Hoksang out to buy, as if Hoksang was nothing more than a servant. Hoksang sent Mai, who came back with a bottle of fake Mekong, with an adequate label and enough change to spare that he tipped her a few baht extra for her cleverness, while looking into her eyes and saying, "Remember that I did this for you." In a different life, he would have believed that he had bought a little loyalty, when she nodded solemnly in response. In this life, he only hopes that she will not immediately try to kill him if the ties suddenly turn on his kind and decide to send the yellow card Chinese all fleeing into their blister-rusted jungle. Perhaps he has bought himself a little time, or not. As he approaches, Dr. Chen calls out in Mandarin, "Your foreign devil is a stubborn one, always moving around." She's a yellow card like him, another refugee forbidden from feeding herself except by wits and clever machinations. If the white shirts discover she was taking rice from a Thai doctor's bowl, he stifles the thought. It's worth it to help someone from his homeland, even if it's only for a day. An atonement of sorts for all that has gone before. Please try to keep him alive. Hoxing smiles slightly. We still need him to sign our pay stubs. She laughs. Ting Mafan. I'm rusty with a needle and thread, but for you, I'd bring this ugly creature back from the dead. If you're that good, I'll call you when I catch Stibisosis. The Yanguizi interjects in English. What's she complaining about? Hoxing eyes him. You move too much. She's damn clumsy. Tell her to hurry up. She also says you are very, very lucky. Another centimeter difference, and the splinter cuts your artery. Then your blood is on the floor with all the rest. Surprisingly, Mr. Lake smiles at his news. His eyes go to the mountain of meat being rendered down. A splinter. And I thought it was the megadont that was going to get me. Yes, you nearly died, Hoxing says. And that would have been disastrous if Mr. Lake's investors were to lose heart and give up the factory. Hoxing grimaces. It is so much harder to influence this Yanguizi than Mr. Yates, and yet the stubborn foreign devil must be kept alive. If only that the factory will not close. It's an irritating realization that he was once so close to Mr. Yates and now so far from Mr. Lake. Bad luck and a stubborn Yanguizi, and now he must come up with a new plan to cement his long-term survival and the revival of his own clan. You should celebrate your survival, I think, Hoxing suggests. Make offerings to Kunyin and Budai for your very good luck. Mr. Lake grins, his pale blue eyes on Hoxing, twin watery devil pools. You're damn right I will. He holds up a bottle of fake Mekong, already half gone. I'll be celebrating all night long. Perhaps you would like me to arrange a companion? The foreign devil's face turns to stone. He looks at Hoxing with something akin to disgust. That's not your business. Hoxing curses himself, even as he keeps his face immobile. He has apparently pushed too far, and now the creature is angry again. He makes a quick cry of apology. Of course, I do not mean to insult you. The Yanguizi looks out across the factory floor. The pleasure of the moment seems drained from him. How bad's the damage? Hoxing shrugs. You are right about the spindle core. It is cracked. And the main chain. We will inspect every link. If we are lucky, it will only be the subtrain that is affected. Not likely. The foreign devil offers him some of the whiskey bottle. Hoxing tries to hide his revulsion as he shakes his head. Mr. Lang grins knowingly and takes another pull. Wipes his lips on the back of his arm. A new shout rises from the Union's butchers as more blood gushes from the Nakedon. Its head lies at an angle now, half severed from the rest of its body. More and more, the carcass is taking on the appearance of separated parts, not an animal at all. More a child's playset for building a megadont from the ground up. Hoxing wonders if there will be a way to force the Union to cut him in on the profits they get from selling the untainted meat. It seems unlikely, given how quickly they staked out their space. But perhaps when the power contract is renegotiated, or when they demand their reparations. Will you take the head? Hoxing asks. You can make a trophy of it. No. The Yanguizi looks offended. Hoxing forces himself not to grimace. It's maddening to work with a creature. The devil's moods are mercurial and always aggressive, like a child. One moment joyful, the next petulant. Hoksang forces down his irritations. Mr. Lake is what he is. His karma has made him a foreign devil, and Hoksang's karma has brought them together. It's no use complaining about the quality of your texts when you are starving. They're all so conniving. Mr. Lake seems to catch Hoksang's expression and explains himself. This wasn't a hunt. It was an extermination. As soon as I hit it with the darts, it was dead. There's no support in that. Ah, of course, very honorable. Hoksang stifles his disappointment. With the foreign devil demanding the head, he would have replaced the stumpy tusk remainders with coconut oil composites and sold the ivory to the doctors near what? Bowarnowit. What? Bowarnowit. That's a name. Now, even that money will be gone. A waste. Hoksang considers explaining the situation to Mr. Lake, explaining the value of the meat and calories and ivory laying before them, then decides against it. The foreign devil would not understand, and the man is too easy to anger, as it is. The Cheshires are here, Mr. Lake comments. Hoksang looks to where the Yanguizi indicates. At the periphery of the bloodletting, shimmering feline shapes have appeared. Twists of shadow and light summoned by the carrion scent. The Yanguizi makes a face of distaste, but Hoksang has a measure of respect for the devil cats. They are clever, thriving in places where they are despised, almost supernatural in their tenacity. Sometimes it seems that they smell the blood before it is even spilled, as if they can peer a little into the future and know precisely when their next meal will appear. The feline shimmers stealth towards the sticky pools of blood. A butcher kicks one away, but there are too many to really fight, and his attack is desultory. Mr. Lakes takes another pool of whiskey. We'll never get them out. There are children who will hunt them, Hoksang says. The bounty's not too expensive. The Yanguizi makes a face of dismissal. We have bounties back in the Midwest, too. Our children are more motivated by yours. That was in italics, so I think that is in his head.
Mm-hmm. Usually that's thoughts.
Yeah. But Hoksang doesn't contest the foreigner's words. He'll put out the bounty regardless. If the cats are allowed to stay, the workers will start rumors that Fiona, the Cheshire trickster spirit, has caused the calamity. The devil cats flicker closer. Calico, then and Ginger, black as night, all of them, fading in and out of view as their bodies take on the colors of their surroundings. They shade red as they dip into the blood pool. Hoksang has heard that Cheshires were supposedly created by a calorie executive, some pure cal or Agrigent man, most likely, for a daughter's birthday. A party favor for when the little princess turned as old as Lewis Carroll's Alice. The child guests took their new pets home where they mated with natural felines, and within 20 years the devil cats were on every continent, and Felis domesticus was gone from the face of the world, replaced by a genetic string that bred true 98% of the time. The green headbands in Malaya hated Chinese people and Cheshires equally. But as far as Hoksang knows, the devil cats still thrive there. The Yanguizi flinches as Dr. Chan sticks him again, and he gives her a dirty look. Finish up, he says to her, now. She whiles, carefully hiding her fear. He moved again, she whispers to Hoksang. The anesthetic is not good, not as good as what I'm used to. Don't worry, Hoksang replies. That's why I gave him the whiskey. Finish your work, I will deal with him. To Lake Jiansheng. He says she is almost finished. The foreigner makes a face, but doesn't threaten her anymore, and at last the doctor completes her sewing. Hoksang takes her aside and hands her an envelope with her payment. She whiles her thanks, and Hoksang shakes his head. There's a bonus in it. I wish you to deliver a letter as well. He hands her another envelope. I would like to speak with the boss of your tower. Dogfucker. She makes a face of distaste. If he heard you call him that, he'd destroy whatever is left of your family. He's a hard one. Just deliver the note. That will be enough. Doubtfully, she takes the envelope. You've been good to our family. All the neighbors also speak of your kindness. Make offerings to your loss. What I do is too little. Hoksang forces a smile. Anyway, we Chinese must stick together. Perhaps in Malayo, we were still Hokkien, or Hakka, or Fifth Wave. But here, we are all yellow cards. I am embarrassed I cannot do more. It is more than anyone else, she waves to him, emulating the manners of their new culture, and departs. Mr. Lake watches her go. She's a yellow card, isn't she? Hoksang nods. Yes, a doctor in Malacca before the incident. The man is quiet, seeming to digest this information. Was she cheaper than a Thai doctor? Hoksang glances at the Yanguizi, trying to decide what he wants to hear. Finally, he says, yes, much cheaper, just as good. Maybe better, but much cheaper. They do not allow us to take Thai niches here, so she has very little work except for yellow cards, who of course have too little to pay. She is happy for the work. Mr. Lake nods thoughtfully, and Hoksang wonders what he is thinking. The man is an enigma. Sometimes Hoksang thinks Yanguizi are too stupid to have possibly taken over the world once, let alone twice. That they succeeded in the expansion, and then even after the energy collapse, beat them back to their own shores. That they returned again with their calorie companies, and their plagues, and their patented grains. They seem protected by the supernatural. By rights, Mr. Lake should be dead. A bit of human offal mingled with the bodies of Banyat and Noi, and the nameless stupid number 4, Spindle Megadont Handler, who caused the beast to panic in the first place, and yet here the foreign devil sits, complaining about the tiny prick of a needle, but completely unconcerned that he has destroyed a 10-ton animal in the blink of an eye. The Yanguizi are strange creatures indeed, more alien than he suspected, even when he traded with them regularly. The Mahout will have to be paid off again, bribed to come back to work, Hoksang observes. Yes. And we will have to hire monks to chant for the factory to make the workers happy again. He must be placated. Hoksang pauses. It will be expensive. People will say that your factory has bad spirits in it, that it is sited wrong, or that the spirit house is not large enough, or that you will cut down a fee's tree when it was built. We will have to bring a fortune teller, perhaps a feng shui master, to get them to believe the place is good, and then the Mahout will demand hazard pay. Mr. Lake interrupts. I want to replace the Mahout, he says. All of them. Hoksang sucks air in through his teeth. It is impossible. The Megadont Union controls all the city's power contracts. It is a government mandate. The white shirts shirts award the power monopoly. There's nothing we can do about the unions. They're incompetent. I don't want them here. Not anymore. Oxing tries to tell the Farang is joking. He smiles hesitantly. It is royal mandate. One might as well wish to replace the Environment Ministry. There's a thought. Mr. Lake laughs. I could team up with Carlyle and Sons and start complaining every day about taxes and carbon credit wallets. Get Trade Minister Akarat to take up our cause. His gaze rests on Hoksang. But that's not the way you like to operate, is it? His eyes become abruptly cold. You like the shadows and the bargaining, the quiet deal. Hoksang swallows. The foreign devil's pale skin and blue eyes are truly horrific. As alien as a devil cat, and just as comfortable in a hostile land. It would be unwise to enrage the white shirt, Hoksang murmurs. The nail that stands up will be pounded down. That's yellow card talk. As you say, but I am alive when others are dead, and the Environment Ministry is very powerful. General Pracha and his white shirts have survived every challenge, even the December 12th attempt. If you wish to poke at a cobra, be ready for its bite. Mr. Lakes looks as if he will argue, but instead shrugs. I'm sure you know best. It is why you pay me. The Yanguizi stares at the dead Megadont. That animal shouldn't have been able to break out of its harness. He takes another drink from his bottle. The safety chains were rusted. I checked. We aren't going to pay a cent of reparations. That's final. That's my bottom line. If they had secured their animal, I wouldn't have had to kill it. Hoksang inclines his head in tacit agreement, though he will not speak it out loud. Kun, there is no other option. Mr. Lake smiles coldly. Yes, of course, they're a monopoly. He makes a face. Yates was a fool to locate here. Hoksang experiences a chill of anxiety. The Yanguizi suddenly looks like a petulant child. Children are rash. Children do things to anger the white shirts or the unions, and sometimes they pick up their toys and run away home. A disturbing thought indeed. Anderson Lake and his investors must not run away. Not yet. What are our losses to date? Mr. Lates asks. Hoksang hesitates, then steels himself to deliver the bad news. With the loss of the Megadon and now the cost of placating the unions, 90 million baht, perhaps. A shout comes from Mai, waving Hoksang over. He doesn't look like he knew it was bad news. He says, there will be damage below as well, I think. Expensive to repair. He pauses, touches the delicate. Who's talking? Oh, it's Hoksang again. Make sure I get these voices right. There would be damage below as well, I think. Expensive to repair. He pauses, touches the delicate subject. Your investors, the Misters Gregg and Yi, will have to be notified. It is likely we do not have the cash to do repairs and also to install and calibrate the new algae baths when they arrive. He pauses. We will require new funds. He waits anxiously, wondering what the Yanguizi's reaction will be. Money flows through the company so quickly sometimes. Hoksang thinks of it as water, and yet he knows that this will not be pleasant news. The investors sometimes become bulky at expenses. With Mr. Yates, the fights over money were common. With Mr. Lakes, less so. The investors do not complain so much now that Mr. Lake has arrived, yet it is still a fantastic amount of money to spend on a dream. I wonder why. If Hawk Sang ran the company, he would have shut it down more than a year ago. But Mr. Lake doesn't blink at the news. All he says is, more money. He turns to Hawk Sang, and then will the algae tanks and the nutrient cultures clear customs? He asks. When? Really? Hawk Sang blanches. It is difficult. Parting the bamboo curtain is not something done in a day. The Environment Ministry likes to interfere. You said you paid to keep the white shirts off our backs. Yes, Hawk Sang inclines his head. All the appropriate gifts have been given. So why was Banyat complaining about contaminated baths if we got live organisms breeding? Hawk Sang hurries to interrupt. Everything is at the anchor pads, delivered by Carlisle and Sons last week. He makes a decision. The Yanguizi needs to hear good news. Tomorrow, the shipment will clear customs. The bamboo curtain will part, and your shipment will arrive on the backs of megadons. He makes himself smile. Unless you wish to fire the Union right now. The devil shakes his head, even smiles a little at the joke, and Hawk Sang feels a flush of relief. Tomorrow, then, for certain? Mr. Lakes asks. Hawk Sang steels himself and inclines his head in agreement, willing it to be the truth. Still, the foreigner holds him with his blue eyes. We spend a lot of money here, but the one thing the investors can't tolerate is incompetence. I won't tolerate it either. I understand. Mr. Lakes nods, satisfied. Good then. We'll wait to talk with the Home Office after we've got the new line equipment out of customs. We'll call. Give them some good news with the bad. I don't want to ask for money with nothing to show at all. He looks at Hawk Sang again. We wouldn't want that, would we? Hawk Sang makes himself nod. As you say. Mr. Lakes takes another drink from his bottle. Good. Find out how bad the damage is. I'll want a report of it in the morning. With this dismissal, Hawk Sang heads across the factory floor to the waiting spindle crew. He hopes he is right about the shipment, that it will be truly released, and he will be proven right by events. It is a gamble, but not a bad one, and the devil would not have wanted to hear too much bad news at once. In any case, when Hawk Sang arrives at the winding spindle, Mai is dusting herself off from another foray into the hull. How does it look? Hawk Sang asks. The winding spindle is fully disengaged from the line now drawn forth. It lies in the ground, a massive spike of teak. The cracks are large and obvious. He calls down in the hull. A lot of damage. A minute later, Pum crawls out, covered in grease. Those tunnels are tight, he gasps. I can't fit down some of them. He wipes the sweat and grime with his arm. It's a sub-train for certain. And we won't know about the rest until we send children down along with the links. If the main chain is damaged, we'll have to pull up the floor. Hawk Sang peers into the revealed spindle hull with a grimace. Flashing back to tunnel rats and cowering survival in the jungles of the south. We'll have Mai find some of her friends. He surveys the damage again. He owned a lot of buildings like this once, whole warehouses filled with goods. And now, look what he is. A factorum for Yanguizi, an old man with a body that's falling apart, and a clan that has been filed down to his single head. He sighs and forces down his frustration. I want to know everything about how bad the damage is before I talk to the Farang again. No surprises. Palm-wise, yes, Kun. Hawk Sang turns for the offices, limping slightly for the first few steps before forcing himself not to favor the leg. With all the activity, his knee aches, a reminder of an encounter of his own with the monsters that drive the factory. He can't help stopping at the top of the steps to study the megalodon carcass, the places where the workers died. Memories scratch and peck at him, swirling like black crows, hungry to take over his head. So many friends dead, so many family gone. 4 years ago, he was a big name. Now, nothing. He pushes through the door. The offices are silent. Empty desks. Expensive treadle computers. The treadmill and its tiny communication screen. The company's massive The company's massive safes. As he scans the room, religious fanatics in green headbands leap from the shadows, machetes whirling, but they're only memories. He closes the door behind him, shutting out the sounds of butchery and repair, forces himself not to go to the window and look down again on the blood and carcass, not to dwell on memories of blood running down the gutters of Malacca, of Chinese heads stacked like durians for sale. This is not Malaya, he reminds himself. You are safe. Still, the images are there, as bright as photographs and Spring Festival fireworks. Even with the incident 4 years in the past, he must perform calming rituals. When the feeling is bad, almost any object reminds him of menace. He closes his eyes, forces himself to breathe deeply to remember the blue ocean and his clipper fleets, white upon the waves. He takes another deep breath, and opens his eyes. The room is safe again. Nothing but empty desks set in careful rows and dusty treadle computers, shutters blocking out the blaze of tropic sunlight, dust motes, and incense. Across the room, deep in shadows, the twin vaults of Spring Life safes gleam dully, iron and steel squatting there, taunting him. Hawk Sang has keys to one, the petty cash safe, but the other, the great safe, only Mr. Lake can open. So close, he thinks. The blueprints are there, just inches away. He has seen them laid out. The DNA samples of the gene-hacked algae, their genome maps on solid-state data cubes. The specifications for growing and processing the resulting scum into lubricants and powder. The necessary tempering requirements for the kink spring filament to accept the new coatings. A next generation of energy storage sits within his grasp, and with it, a hope of resurrection for himself and his clan. Yates mumbled and drank, and Hawk Sang filled his baijiu glass and listened to his rambles and encouraged his trust and dependence for more than a year, and it was all a waste. Now it comes down to this safe that he cannot open because Yates was foolish enough to raise the investor's ire, and too incompetent to bring his dream to fruition. There are new empires waiting to be built if only Hawk Sang can reach the documents. All he has are incomplete copies from what they used to sit in the open, splashed across Yates' desk before the drunken fool bought the cursed office safe. Now, there's a key and a combination and a wall of iron between him and the blueprints. A good safe. Hawk Sang is familiar with the sorts. Benefited from its security when he, too, was a big name and had files he needed to protect. It is irritating, perhaps more irritating than anything else, that the foreign devils used the same brand of the safe that he used for his own trading empire in Malaya. Ying Tai, a Chinese tool, twisted to foreign purposes. He has spent days staring at the safe, meditating on the knowledge that it contains. Hoksang cocks his head, suddenly thoughtful. Did you close it, Mr. Lake? In all the excitement, did you forget perhaps to lock it closed once again? Hoksang's heart beats faster. Did you lapse, Mr. Yates? Mr. Yates sometimes did. Hoksang tries to control his growing excitement. He limps across to the safe, stands before it. A shrine, an object of worship. A monolith of forged steel, impervious to everything except patience and diamond drills. Every day he sits across from it, feels it mocking him. Could it be as simple as this? Is it possible that in the rush of disaster, Mr. Lake simply forgot to close it? Hoksang reaches out hesitantly and puts his hand on the lever. He holds his breath, prays to his ancestors, prays to the elephant-headed Farakanut, to the Thai people's removers of obstacles, to every god he knows. He leans on the handle. 1,000 jin of steel push back. Every molecule resisting his pressure. Hoksang lets out his breath and steps back, forcing down his disappointment. Patience. Every safe has a key. If Mr. Yates had not been so incompetent, if he had not somehow angered the investors, he would have been the perfect key. Now it must be Mr. Lake instead. When Mr. Yates installed the safe, he joked that he had to keep the family jewels safe, and laughed. Hoksang had made himself nod and wry and smile, but all he could think about was how valuable the blueprints were and how stupid he had been not to copy faster when they had been easily available. And now Yates is gone, and in his place a new devil. A devil truly. Blue-eyed and gold-haired and hard-edged where Yates was soft. This dangerous creature who double-checks everything. Hoksang does and makes everything so much harder. And let me reread that. That was blah, blah, blah. This dangerous creature who double-checks everything Hoksang does and makes everything much harder, and who must somehow be convinced to give up the secrets of his new company. Hoksang purses his lips. Patience. We must be patient. Eventually, the foreign devil will make a mistake. Hoksang! Hoksang goes to the door and waves down to Mr. Lake, acknowledging the summons. But instead of going downstairs immediately, he goes to his shrine, prostrates himself before the image of Kuan Yin, and begs that she will have mercy on him and his ancestors, that she will give him a chance to redeem himself and his family. Beneath the golden character for good fortune, suspended upside down so that it will gush down upon him, Hoksang places Utex rice and cuts open a blood orange. The juice runs down his arm, a ripe one, clean of contamination and expensive. One cannot cut too close to the bone with the gods. They like the fat, not the lean. He lights incense as smoke streams into the still air, filling the office once again. Hoksang prays. He prays that the factory will not close, and that his bribes will bring the new line equipment through the bamboo curtain without difficulty. That the foreign devil, Mr. Lake, will lose his head and trust him too much, and that the cursed safe will open and reveal its secrets to him. Hoksang prays for luck. Even an old Chinese yellow card means luck. That was chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Where are we at?
You are at... Oh, here we are. 2:14. So you got about 45 minutes left.
45 minutes. I would like a 5-minute break to grab a quick snack.
Yeah. Alrighty, we'll take a quick break here. We're back.
We're back. Let's see. Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. We've got about a half hour left, so we'll see how far we get.
Yep. So I believe this is the this is a chapter that gets super dark right to start off with. So
buckle up, kids.
Yep. Fair warning to everyone listening. I don't believe this would not be for faint of heart. Alrighty.
Content warning. You've been warned.
Emiko sips whiskey, wishing she were drunk, and waits for the signal from Kanika that it is time for her humiliation. Part of her still struggles against it, but the rest of her, the part that sits with her midriff bearing her mini jacket and tight fascine skirt and a glass of whiskey in her hand, doesn't have the energy to fight. And then she wonders if she has it backwards. If the part that struggles to maintain her illusions of self-respect is the part intent upon her destruction. If her body, this collection of cells and manipulated DNA, with its own stronger, more practical needs, is actually the survivor, the one with will. Isn't that why she sits here, listening to the throb of beating sticks and the wail of Pai clang as girls writhe under glowworms and men and whores shout their encouragement? Is it because she lacks the will to die, or because she is too stubborn to allow it? Relay says that all things come in cycles, like the rise and fall of tides along the beaches of Koh Samet, or the rise and fall of a man's prick when he has a pretty girl. Relay slaps his girls on their bare bottoms and laughs at the jokes of the new wave of gaijin and tells Emiko that whatever they want to do with her, money is money, and nothing is new under the sun. And perhaps he is right. Nothing that Raleigh demands has not been demanded before. Nothing that Kanika conceives to hurt her and make her cry is truly different, except that she draws cries and moans from a Windup Girl. This, at least, is a novelty. Look, she is almost human. Gendo-sama used to say that she was more than human. He used to stroke her black hair after they had made love and say that he thought it a pity new people were not more respected. And really, it was too bad her movements would never be smooth. But still, did she not have perfect eyesight and perfect skin and disease and cancer-resistant genes? And who was she to complain? At least her hair would never turn gray, and she would never age as quickly as he, even with his surgeries and pills and ointments and herbs that kept him young. He had stroked her hair and said, "You are beautiful, even if you are new people. Do not be ashamed." And Emiko had snuggled into his embrace. "No, I am not ashamed." But that had been in Kyoto, where new people were common, where they served well, and were sometimes well respected. Not human, certainly, but also not the threat that the people of this savage, basic culture make her out to be. Certainly not the devils that the Grahamites warn against at their pulpits, or the soulless creatures imagined out of hell that the forced monk Buddhists claim. Not a creature, unable to ever achieve a soul or a place in the cycles of rebirth and the striving for nirvana. Not the affront to the Quran that the green headbands believe. The Japanese were practical. An old population needed young workers in all their varieties, and if they came from test tubes and grew in creches, this was no sin. The Japanese were practical. And isn't that why you sit here? Because you are Japanese and so very practical. Though you look like one, though you speak their tongue, though Kyoto is the only home you knew, you are not Japanese. Emiko puts her head in her hands. She wonders if she will find a date or if she will be left alone at the end of the night, and then wonders if she knows which she prefers. Relay says there is nothing new under the sun, but tonight, when Emiko pointed out that she was new people and there had never seen new people before, Relay laughed and said she was right and special, and who knows, maybe that meant anything was possible. And then he slapped her bottom and told her to get up on stage and show how special she was going to be tonight. Emiko traces her fingers through the wetness of the bar rings. Warm beers sit and sweat wet slick rings, as slick as girls and men, as slick as her skin when she oils it to shine, to be soft like butter when a man touches her, as soft as skin can be, and perhaps more so, because even if her physical movements are all stutter-stop, flash-bulb strange, her skin is more than perfect. Even with her augmented vision, she barely spies the pores in her flesh, so small, so delicate, so optimal, but made for Nippon and a rich man's climate control, not for here. Here, she is too hot and sweats too little. She wonders if she were a different kind of animal, some mindless fury Cheshire, say, if she would feel cooler. Not because her pores would be larger and more efficient and her skin not so painfully impermeable, but simply because she wouldn't have to think. She wouldn't have to know that she had been trapped in a suffocating, perfect skin by some irritating scientist with his test tubes and DNA confetti mixes who made her flesh so smooth. Who made her flesh so smooth, her insides too hot. Kanika grabs her by the hair. Emiko gasps at the sudden attack. She searches for help, but none of the other patrons are interested in her. They are watching the girls on stage. Emiko's peers are servicing guests, plying them with Kimmer whiskey and pressing their bottoms into their laps and running their hands over the men's chests. And anyway, they have no love for her. Even the good-hearted ones, the ones with Jaidi, who somehow manage to care for a wind-up girl like herself, will not step in. Relay is talking with another gaijin, smiling and laughing with the man, but his ancient eyes are on Emiko, watching for what she will do. Kanaka yanks her hair again. Bye! Emiko obeys, climbing down from the bar stool and tottering with her wind-up way towards the circle stage. The men all laugh and point at the Japanese wind-up and her broken, unnatural steps. A freak of nature transplanted from her native habitat, trained from birth to duck her head and bow. Emiko tries to distance herself from what is about to happen. She's trained to be clinical about such things. The creche in which she was created and trained had no illusions about the many uses a new person might be put to, even a refined one. New people serve and do not question. She moves towards the stage with the careful steps of a fine courtesan, stylized and deliberate movements, refined over the decades to accommodate her genetic heritage, to emphasize her beauty and her difference. But it is wasted on the crowd. All they see are stutter stop motions, a joke, an alien toy, a wind-up. They have her strip off her clothes. Kanika flicks water onto her oil skin. Emiko glistens with water jewels. Her nipples harden. The glowworms twist and writhe overhead, sending out phosphorescent mating light. The men laugh at her. Kanika slaps her hip and makes her bow. Slaps her ass hard enough to burn. Tells her to bow lower, to make obeisance to these small men who imagine themselves to be the vanguard of some new expansion. The men laugh and wave and point and order more whiskey. Relay grins from his place in the corner, the fond elder uncle happy to teach these newcomers, these small corporate men and women high on fantasies of multinational profiteering, the ways of the old world. Kanika motions that Emiko should kneel. A black-bearded gaijin with a deep tan of a clipper ship sailor watches from inches away. Emiko meets the man's eyes. He stares intently, as if examining an insect under a magnifying glass, fascinated and yet also repulsed. She has the urge to snap at him, to try to force him to look at her, to see her instead of simply evaluating her as a piece of genetic trash. Instead, she bows and knocks her head against the teak stage in subservience, while Kanika speaks in Thai and tells them Emiko's life story, that she was once a rich Japanese plaything, that she is theirs now, a toy for them to play with, to break even. And then she grabs Emiko's hair and yanks her up. Emiko gasps as her body arches. She catches a glimpse of the bearded man staring in surprise at a sudden violent gesture. At her abasement, a flash of the crowd, the ceiling with its glowworm cages. Kanika drags her further back, bending her like a willow, forcing her to thrust her breast out to the crowd, to arch further still, to spread her thighs as she struggles not to topple sideways. Her head touches the teak stage. Her body forms a perfect arc. Kanika says something, and the crowd laughs. The pain in Emiko's back and neck is extreme. She can feel the crowd's eyes on her. A physical thing, molesting her. She is utterly exposed. Liquid gushes over her. She tries to rise, but Kanika presses her down and dumps more beer in her face. Emiko gags and sputters, drowning. Finally, Kanika releases her, and Emiko jerks upright, coughing. Liquid foams down her chin, spills down her neck and breasts, trickles to her crotch. Everyone is laughing. Sang is already offering the bearded man a fresh beer, and he is grinning and tipping Sang. And everyone is laughing at how Emiko's body twitches and jerks now that she is in a panic, coughing the liquid from her lungs. She is nothing but a silly marionette creature now, all stutter stop motion. Herky-jerky, hichi-kichi, with no trace of the stylized grace that her mistress Mizumi Sensei trained into her when she was a girl in the creche. There is no elegance or character movements now. The telltales of her DNA are violently present for all to see and mock. Emiko continues coughing, almost retching at the beer in her lungs. Her limbs twitch and flail, giving everyone a chance to see her true nature. Finally, she gets a full breath, controls her flailing movement. She reverts to stillness, kneeling, waiting for the next assault. In Japan, she was a wonder. She is nothing but a wind-up. The men laugh at her stage gate and make faces of disgust that she exists at all. She is a creature forbidden to them. The Thai men would happily mulch her in their methane composting pools. If they met her or Nitrogen Calorie Man, it is hard to say which they would rather see mulched first. And then there are the Gaijin. She wonders how many of them claim membership in the Granmai Church, dedicated to destroying everything that she represents. her affront to niche and nature, and yet they sit contentedly and enjoy this humiliation of her even still. Kanika grabs her again. She has disrobed now, and has a jadeite cock in her hands. She shoves Emiko down, pushing her onto her back. "Hold her hands," she says, and the men reach out eagerly, grip her wrists. Kanika pries her legs wide, and then Emiko cries out as Kanika takes her. Emiko turns her face aside, waiting out the assault, but Kanika sees her avoidance. She pinches Emiko's face in one hand and forces her to show her features so that the men can see the effect of Kanika's ministrations. The men urge Kanika on, begin to chant, count and tie, Nuang, Song, Sam, Si. Kanika indulges them in a building rhythm. The men sweat and watch and shout for more, for the price of their admission. The men are holding her down, hands on her ankles and wrists, freeing Kanika for her abuse. Emiko writhes, her body shaking and jerking, twitching in the ways that the wind-ups do, in the ways that Kanika excels at bringing out. The men laugh and comment on the freakish movements, the stutter-stop motions, flashbulb strange. Kanika's fingers join the jade between Emiko's legs, play at Emiko's core. Emiko's shame builds. Again, she tries to turn her face aside. Men are gathered around, close, staring. More crowd behind, straining for a glimpse. Emiko moans. Kanika laughs, low and knowing. She says something to the men and increases her tempo. Her fingers play in Emiko's folds. Emiko moans again as her body betrays her. She cries out, arches. Her body performs just as it was designed, just as the scientists with her test tubes intended. She cannot control it no matter how hard she despises it. The scientists will not allow her even this small disobedience. She comes. The audience roars approval, laughing at the bizarre convulsions that orgasm brings from her DNA. Kanika gestures at her movements, as if to say, "You see? Look at this animal." And then she is kneeling above Emiko's face and hissing to Emiko that she is nothing, and will always be nothing. And for once, the dirty Japanese get what is coming to them. Emiko wants to tell her that no self-respecting Japanese would do these things. Wants to tell her that all Kanika plays with is a disposable Japanese toy, a triviality of Japanese ingenuity, like Matsushida's disposable cellulose handle grips for a cycle rickshaw. But she has said it before, and it only makes things worse. If she remains silent, the abuse will end soon. Even if she is new people, there is nothing new under the sun. And that's Emiko's introduction.
Yay.
Yellow card coolies crank the wide bore fans, driving air through the club. Sweat drips from their faces and runs in gleaming rivulets down their backs. They burn calories as quickly as they consume them, and yet still the club bakes with the memory of the afternoon sun. Emiko stands beside a fan, letting it cool her as much as she can, pausing in her labors of ferrying drinks for customers and hoping that Kanika will not catch sight of her again. Whenever Kanika gets a hold of her, she drags her out to where the men can all examine her, makes her walk in the traditional Japanese wind-up way, emphasizing the stylized motions of her kind, makes her turn this way and that, and the men joke about her aloud, even as they silently consider buying her once their friends have gone away. In the center of the main room, men invite young girls into their fasten and parquet as the band plays contraction mixes, songs that Raleigh dredged up from his memory and translated for use on traditional Thai instruments. Strange, melancholy amalgamations of the past, as exotic as his children with their turmeric hair and their wide round eyes. Emiko! She flinches. It's Raleigh, motioning her towards his office. Men's gazes follow her stutter-stop movements as she passes the bar. Kaneko looks up from her date, where they twine hands and nuzzle close. She smiles slightly as Emiko goes by. When Emiko first came to the country, she was told that eyes have 13 kinds of smiles. She suspects Kaneko's denotes no goodwill. Come on, Raleigh says, impatient. He leads her through a curtain and down the hall past where the girls change into their work clothes and then through another door. The memorabilia of 3 lifetimes lines his office walls. Everything from yellowed photographs of Bangkok lit entirely by electricity to an image of Raleigh wearing the traditional dress of some savage hill tribe in the north. Raleigh invites Emiko to recline on a cushion on the raised platform where he does his private business. Another man is already sprawled there, a pale, tall creature with blue eyes and blonde hair and an angry scar on his neck. The man startles when she comes into the room. Jesus, no, you didn't tell me she was Windup, he says. Raleigh grins and settles on his own cushion. Didn't you know you were a Grahamite? The man almost smiles at the taunt. Keeping something this risky. You're playing with Blisteros, Raleigh. The white shirts could be all over you. The ministry doesn't give a damn as long as I pay the bribes. The guys who patrol around here aren't the tiger of Bangkok. They just want to make a buck and sleep through the night. He laughs. Buying her ice is more expensive than paying the environment ministry to look the other way. Ice. Wrong poor structure. She overheats. He scowls. If I'd known beforehand, I wouldn't have bought her. The room reeks of opium, and Raleigh busies himself filling the pipe again. He claims that opium has kept him young, vital through the years, but Emiko suspects that he sails for Tokyo and the same aging treatments Gendo-sama used. Raleigh holds the opium over his lamp. It heats and sizzles, and he turns the ball on its needles, working the tar until it turns viscous. Then he quickly rolls it back to a ball and presses it into his pipe. He extends the pipe to the lamp and breathes deeply. As the tar turns to smoke, he closes his eyes, blindly offers it to the pale man. No, thank you. Raleigh's eyes open. He laughs. You should try it. It's the one thing the plagues didn't get. Lucky for me. Can't imagine going through withdrawal at my age. The man doesn't answer. Instead, his pale blue eyes study Emiko. She has the uncomfortable feeling of being taken apart, cell by cell. Not so much that he undresses her with his gaze. This she experiences every day. The feel of the man's eyes darting across her skin, clasping at her body, hungering and despising her. Instead, this study is clinically detached. If there is hunger there, he hides it well. She's the one? He asks. Raleigh nods. Emiko, tell the gentleman about our friend from the other night. Emiko glances at Raleigh, discomfited. She is fairly certain that she has never seen this pale blonde gaijin at the club before. At least that he has never attended any special performance. She has never served him a whiskey ice. She racks her memories. No, she would remember. He has a sunburn, obvious despite the dim flicker of the candles and opium lamp, and his eyes are too strangely pale, unpleasantly so. She would remember him. Go on, Raleigh urges. Tell him what you told me. about the white shirt, the kid you went with. Relay is normally fanatic about the privacy of guests. He even talked about building a separate stairwell for patrons, simply so they will not be seen entering or leaving Floenshent Tower at all. An access passage that would allow them to enter from a block away under the street, and yet now he wants her to reveal so much. The boy, she asks, stalling for time, unnerved by Raleigh's eagerness to expose a guest, and a white shirt at that. She glances at the stranger again, wondering who he is, and what sort of hold he has on her papa son. Go on, Raleigh motions impatiently, the opium pipe gripped in his teeth. He leans into the opium lamp to smoke again. He was a white shirt, Yumiko begins. He came with a group of other officers. A new one, brought around by his friends. Right, no quotes. Alright. A new one, brought around by his friends, all of them laughing and egging him on, all of them drinking free because Raleigh knows better than to charge. Their goodwill worth more than the liquor. The young man, drunk, laughing, and making jokes about her. Can't tell if she's talking or not. Okay, no quotes at the end. The young man, drunk, laughing, and making jokes about her in the bar, and then stealthily returning later in privacy, hidden from his colleagues' prying eyes. The pale man makes a face. They'll go with you, with your kind. Hey, Yumiko nods, showing nothing of what she thinks of his contempt. White shirts and Grahamates. Raleigh laughs softly. Sexist hypocrisy. They go together like coffee and cream. The stranger glances sharply at Raleigh, and Emiko wonders if the old man can see the disgust in those pale blue eyes, or if he is too stoned on opium to care. The pale man leans forward, cutting Raleigh out of the conversation. And what did this white shirt tell you? Is there a flicker of fascination there? Does she intrigue him, or is it simply her story that interests him? Despite herself, Yumiko feels a stirring of her genetic urge to please, an emotion that she hasn't felt since her abandonment. Something about the man reminds her of Gendo-sama. Even his pale blue gaijin eyes are like pools of chemical bath acid, and his face is habuki pale. He has presence. The air of authority is palpable and strangely comforting. Are you Grahamite? She wonders. Would you use me and then mulch me? She wonders if she cares. He is not beautiful. He is not Japanese. He is nothing. And yet, his horrifying eyes hold her with the same power that Gendo-sama used to exercise. What do you wish to know? She whispers. Your white shirt said something about gene ripping, the gaijin says. Do you remember? Hey. Yes. I think perhaps he was very proud. He came with a bag of newly designed fruits, gifts for all of the girls. More interest from the gaijin. It warms her. And what did the fruit look like? He asks. It was red, I think, with threads, long threads. Green hairs. About how long? He indicates about so long. He indicates with a centimeter of his fingers. Thickish. She nods. Yes, that's right. He called them Noa, and his aunt made them. She was going to be recognized by the Child Queen's protector, the son that Jalpreya, for her contribution to the kingdom. He was very proud of his aunt. And he went with you, the man prompts. Yes, but later, after his friends were gone. The pale man shakes his head impatiently. He doesn't care about the details of the liaison. The boy's nervous eyes, the way he approached the mama-san, and how Emiko was sent up to wait for him to follow a safe time later, so that no one would make the connection. What else did he say about his aunt? He asks. Just that she rips for the ministry. Nothing else? Not where she rips? Where they have test fields? Nothing of that sort? No. That's it? The gaijin glances at Raleigh, irritated. This is what you dragged me here for. Raleigh arouses himself. The farang, he prompts. Tell him about the farang. Emiko can't help but show her confusion. Sorry? She remembers the white shirt boy bragging about his aunt, how his aunt would be given a prize and a promotion for her work with Noel. Nothing of farang. I don't understand. Raleigh puts down his pipe, scowling. You told me he talked about farang gene ripplers. No, she shakes her head. He said nothing about foreigners. I am sorry. The scarred gaijin makes a face of irritation. Let me know when you've got something worth my time, Raleigh. He reaches for his hat, makes to stand. Raleigh glares at her. You said there was a farang gene ripper. No, Emiko shakes her head. Wait. She puts out a hand to the gaijin. Wait, Kun, please, wait. I know what Raleigh-san is talking about. Her fingers brush his arm. The gaijin jerks away from her touch. He steps out of reach with a look of disgust. Please, she begs. I did not understand. The boy said nothing about farang, but he used a name. It could have been farang. She looks to Raleigh for confirmation. Is this what you mean, the strange name? It could have been foreign, yes? Not Thai? Not Chinese or Hokkien? Raleigh interrupts. Tell him what you told me, Emiko. That is all I want. Tell him everything, every single detail, just like you were talking to me after a date. And so she does. As the gaijin sits again, listening suspiciously, she tells everything about the boy's nervousness, how he couldn't look at her, and then how he couldn't look away, how he talked because his erection would not come, how he watched her undressed, how he talked about his aunt, trying to make himself seem important to a whore, and a new people whore at that, and how strange and silly that had seemed to her, and how she hid her thoughts of him. And then finally the part that makes Raleigh smile in satisfaction, and the pale scarred man's eyes widen.
In 3 hours.
Right. Let me see how much is left. Few pages left. Like 5 pages left. I can do this. Like 3 to 5. 3.5. 4.5. You get the idea.
Okay, keep going.
The boy said the man Gibun-sen gives them blueprints, but he betrays them more often than not. But his aunt discovered a trickery, and then they made the successful rip of the null. Jibu-sen did hardly anything for them with the null. It was all his aunt's work in the end. She nods. That is what he said. This Gibu-san tricks them. But his aunt is too brilliant to be tricked. The scarred man studies her closely, cold blue eyes, pale skin like a corpse. Jibu-sen, the man murmurs. You're sure that was the name? Jibu-sen, I am sure. The man nods, thoughtful. The lamp that Raleigh uses for his opium cackles in the silence. Far below, on the street, a late-night water seller calls out, his voice floating up through the open shutters and mosquito screens. The noise seems to break the gaijin from his reverie. His pale eyes focus on her again. I would be very interested to know if your friend returned for another visit. He was ashamed afterward. Himiko touches her cheek where she hides a fading bruise with makeup. I think he will not. Relay interrupts. Sometimes they come back, even if they feel guilty. He shoots her a dark look. She makes herself nod in confirmation. The boy will not be coming back, but it will make the gaijin happy to think so. And it will make Raleigh happy. Raleigh is her patron. She should agree with conviction. Sometimes is all she can manage. Sometimes they come back, even if they are ashamed. The gaijin eyes them both. Why don't you go get her some ice, Raleigh? It's not time for her next round, and she's got a show coming up. I'll cover the loss. Raleigh clearly wants to stay, but he's smart enough. Not to protest. He forces a smile. Of course. Why don't you two talk? He looks at her significantly as he leaves. Yumiko knows Raleigh wants her to seduce this gaijin, to test him with herky-jerky sex and the promise of transgression, and then to listen to him and report all the girls are asked to do. She leans closer, letting the gaijin see her exposed skin. His eyes trace across her flesh, following the line of her thigh where it slips underneath her facian. The way her hip presses against the fabric. He looks away. Yumiko hides her irritation. Is he attractive? Nervous? Disgusted? She cannot tell. With most men, it's easy, obvious. They fit such simple patterns. She wonders if he finds a new person too disgusting, or if perhaps he prefers boys. How do you survive here? The gaijin asks. The white shirts should have mulched you by now. The payments, as long as Raleigh-san is willing to pay, they will ignore. And you live somewhere too? Raleigh pays for that as well? When she nods, he says, expensive, I suppose. She shrugs. Raleigh-san keeps a tally of my debts. As if summoned, Raleigh returns with her eyes. The gaijin pauses as Raleigh comes through the door, waits impatiently as Raleigh sets down the glass on the low table. Raleigh hesitates, and when the scarred man ignores him, he mumbles something about enjoying themselves and leaves again. He watches the old man's departure thoughtfully. She watches the old man's departure thoughtfully, wondering if the hold this man has over Raleigh. Before her, the glass of icy water sweats, seductive. At the man's nod, she reaches for it and drinks. Convulsive. Before she knows it, it is gone. She presses the cold glass against her cheek. The scarred man watches. So, you're not engineered for the tropics, he says. He leaned forward, studying her, his eyes moving across her skin. It's interesting that your designers modified your pore structure. She fights the urge to recoil from his interest. She steels herself, leans closer. Just to make my skin more attractive, smooth. She draws her font in above her knees, lets it slide up her thighs. Would you like to touch? He glances at her, questioning. Please, she nods permission. He reaches out and his hand slips along her flesh. Lovely, he murmurs. She feels a flush of satisfaction as his voice catches. His eyes have gone wide like a child unmoored. He clears his throat. Your skin is burning, he says. As you say, I was not designed for this climate. Now he's examining every bit of her, eyes roaming across her. Starving, as if he will feed upon her with his gaze. Raleigh will be pleased. It makes sense, he says. Your model must only sell to elites. They'd have climate control. He nods to himself, studying her. It would be worth a trade-off to them. He looks up at her. Mishimoto? Were you one of Mishimoto's then? You can't be diplomatic. The government would never bring a wind-up into the country, not with the palace's religious stance. His eyes lock with hers. You were dumped by Mishimoto, weren't you? Emiko fights the sudden flood of shame. It's as though he has sliced her open and gone rooting through her entrails, impersonal and insulting, like some Sibissosis medical technician making an autopsy. She sets her drink down carefully. Are you a gene ripper? She asks. Is this how you know so much about me? His expression shifts in an instant from wide-eyed fascination to smirking slyness. More like a hobbyist, he says. A gene spotter, if you will. Really? She lets him see some of the contempt she feels for him. Not maybe a man from the Midwest Compact, perhaps. Not a company man. She leans forward. Not a calorie man, possibly? She whispers the last words, but they have their effect. The man jerks back. His smile remains frozen, but his eyes now evaluate her the way a mongoose evaluates a cobra. What an interesting thought, he says. She welcomes the guarded gaze after her own feelings of shame. If she's lucky, perhaps this gaijin will slaughter her and be done with it. At least then she can rest. She waits, expecting him to strike her. No one tolerates impudence from new people. Misumi-sensei made sure that Emiko never showed a trace of rebellion. She taught Emiko to obey, to kowtow, to bend before the desires of her superiors, and to be proud of her place. Even though Emiko is ashamed by the gaijin's prying into her history and by her own loss of control, Mizumi-sensei would say that this is no excuse to prod and bait the man. It hardly matters. It is done. And Emiko feels dead enough in her soul that she will happily pay whatever price he chooses to extract. Instead, the man says, "Tell me again about the night with the boy." The anger has left his eyes, replaced by an expression of implacable as Gendo-sama once was. "Tell me everything," he says. "Now." "Tell me everything. Now!" His voice whips her with command. She wills herself to resist, but the built-in urge of a new person to obey is too strong. The feeling of shame at her rebellion too overwhelming. He is not your patron, she reminds herself, but even so, at the command in his voice, she's nearly pissing herself with the need to please him. He came last week. She returns again to the details of her night with the white shirt. She spins out the story, telling it for this gaijin's pleasure, much as she once played samisen for Gendo-sama, a dog desperate to serve. She wishes she could tell him to eat blister rust and die, but that is not her nature, and so instead she speaks in the gaijin instance. He makes her repeat things, asks more questions, returns to threads she thought he had forgotten. He is relentless, pecking at her story, forcing explanations. He's very good with his questions. Gendo-sama used to question underlings this way, when he wanted to know why a clipper ship was not completed on schedule. He bored through the excuses like a gene-hacked weevil. Finally, the gaijin nods, satisfied. Good, he says. Very good. Emiko feels a wash of pleasure at his compliment and despises herself for it. The gaijin finishes his whiskey, reaches into his pocket, and pulls out a wad of cash, fills off several bills as he stands. These are for you only. Don't show them to Raleigh. I'll settle with him before I leave. She supposes she should feel grateful, but she instead feels used, as used by this man with his questions and his words as those others, the hypocritical Grahamites and the environmental ministry's white shirts, with no wish to transgress with her biological oddity, who all slaver for the pleasure of intercourse with an unclean creature. She holds the bills between her fingers. Her training tells her to be polite, but his self-satisfied largesse irritates her. What does the gentleman think I will do with this extra bat? She asks. Buy a pretty piece of jewelry. Take myself out to dinner. I am property, yes? I am Relay's. She tosses the money at his feet. It makes no difference if I am rich or poor. I am owned. The man pauses, one hand on the sliding door. Why not run away then? To where? My import permits have expired. She smiles bitterly. Without Relay-san's patronage and connections, the white shirts wouldn't mulch me. You wouldn't run further north? The man asked. For the windups there. What windups? The man smiles slightly. Relay hasn't mentioned them to you. Windup enclaves in the high mountains. Escapees from the Cold War. Released ones? At her blank expression, he goes on. There are whole villages up there, living off the jungles. It's poor country. Gene hacked half to death. Out beyond Chiang Rai and across the Mekong. But for the windups, they don't have any patrons, and they don't have any owners. The Cold War is still running, but if you hate your niche so much, it's an alternative to Relay. Is it true? She leans forward. This village, is it real? The man smiles slightly. You can ask Relay. If you don't believe me, he's seen them with his own eyes. He pauses, but then I suppose he wouldn't see much benefit in telling you. Might encourage you to slip your leash. You are telling the truth? The pale man tips his hat. At least as much truth as you've told me. He slides the door aside and slips out, leaving Emiko alone, with a pounding heart and a sudden urge to live. That was chapter 3.
Ooh, chapter 3. That actually didn't run very long at all. Alright, guys. So we knocked out 3 chapters in 3 hours.
Introduced 3 major players in this book.
Well, thank you all, everybody who stopped by to watch. Also, I noticed they're up because the ambiance stopped at 3 hours. That checks out. Thank you, everybody.
Just in time.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody who was watching, who stuck around. Anybody who's watching on YouTube, feel free to leave a like, comment down below if you want to see more. But we're going to head off, and stay tuned every Friday for more of this. We'll try and keep this as a thing, since it's so positive on YouTube. Everybody have a good night, day, whatever time in the world it is, wherever you are, and take care of each other.